Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have a little crowd out there, so maybe we will sing "O Canada" tonight. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Town of Lincoln Council to order and ask you to rise for the singing of the national anthem. Thank you, and be seated. As we have so many new members in the audience tonight, we'll do our regular roll call. On my far left is Councillor Paul McPherson, Councillor Diane Regima, Councillor John Pachuriva, and Councillor Wayne McMillan. And to my far right, Councillor Tony Brunet, Councillor Lynn Timmers, Councillor Dave Thompson, and Councillor Rob Foster. On my right is Mr. William Colassa. He is the Clerk of the Town of Lincoln. On my left, Mr. Michael Krikopoulos, the CAO. And in the gallery, we have Carrie Beattie, who is our Senior Communications Officer. And at this back desk, we have Chief Greg Hudson, Chief of Lincoln Fire Service. We have Angela Safini from she is our treasurer from the Finance Department. Amanda Fife, who is the new second council meeting, Amanda Fife, our new finance director, and Dave Graham, who is the director of infrastructure, or parks and, or not parks, but public works, as you might know it more easily. Councillor, are there any declarations of interest? There being none, I will ask for your confirmation of the agenda. Are there any adjustments any of you wish to make? No? Then we'll go forward. And I'll ask for the adoption of the previous council meeting. And I have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Councillor Pachuriva that the minutes of the November 21st, 2016 regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated. Are there any errors or omissions? There being none, your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Councillors, is there any business arising from the minutes? There being none, we will move on to the Mayor's report. And my report this evening is in two parts. The first part, I will talk to you about some of the events that have been going on since the last council meeting. The second half of the report, I'm going to be speaking to you about the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital building project. And we have Mr. Kurt Whitnell with us tonight, who is a member of the advisory board. Ladies and gentlemen, in Cogeco land, and those of you who are in the audience, this is a very important time of year for many of us. And since that last meeting, we've been attending a variety of public events that will eventually lead up to Hanukkah, which starts at sunset on December 21st, Christmas Day on December 25th, which will be followed by Kwanzaa on December the 26th. I also want to advise you that the New Year's levy this year, will be held at the Fleming Center from 2 to 4:30. And this is the first time the event has been here, and I'm telling you about this now, and I'll probably remind you again because we really want a great turnout. It'll be a public skate and much more exciting than in the past, as it will be the launch for the sesquicentennial celebrations. On November the 22nd, I, with the CAO Kirkopoulos, traveled to Ottawa with Councillor McPherson and Pachariva to examine firsthand a dome structure for indoor sports. And I'm sure the councillors will have more to say about that. Our action is part of many steps that are needed to look into solutions and options for an arena roof, and also pool conditions that need our attention at the Jordan Lions pool. And with program expansion opportunities and our need to accommodate an increasing population at Prudhome's, as well as people's desire for 12-month access to sports, we feel that we need to be giving this some very early attention. So there'll be more to report on that. On November 23rd, I attended the opening of the Brock University Faculty of Nursing Patient Care Lab. This is quite an exciting facility for students to have. As when I was a nursing student, we had these human models that never moved, Mr. and Mrs. Chase. And these models can be programmed so that they will develop, they really demonstrate a variety of symptoms. And one of the models even had a camera on his head so that students could see how they were interacting, what their interviewing skills were like, and it really is a very, very progressive move. I was very, very happy to see those changes. I attended the Premier's Award for Agri-Food and Innovation and Excellence, and there were 5 innovators from Niagara who were recognized, and all 5 of them were from Lincoln. Now, we shared the award for the chicken farmers of Ontario with West Lincoln and some of the other surrounding communities, but we have our share of poultry in Lincoln as well. But the others that were recognized were Tigliar Berry Farms, Cave Springs for their BioGill management system for wastewater, and North End Gardens in Jordan Station for the Medinilla Magnifica. And there it is over there. This is the plant that they have spent 17 years preparing for market. Also, Vineland Growers were recognized for the Cold Snap pear. And I'd love to go into detail, but it's just too long, but it is an incredible branding opportunity that occurred here, and a lot of proprietary patents involved, and the return for the farmers that are growing it is really exponentially much higher than in the past. So on behalf of Council, I congratulate all those who were selected, and I must say that we share this very proud moment for you and with you. The first follow-up meeting on the Holland delegation has taken place, and we are now in the midst of planning for the report. Mike's going to be creating a table of contents, and then we'll begin to fill in those spaces. On November the 29th, several of us attended some site visits in town to examine some issues that constituents were experiencing, and one was in relation to light contamination, and the other was in regard to trespass issues off the Bruce Trail and onto private land, and also significant associated damage and littering. And this is becoming a big problem, and trails are a very, very important part of who our communities are now, but there must be a much higher level of respect for property owners and a regard for the environment. The turkey rolls, it's turkey roll season, so we've been attending the usual round of having turkey rolls, and all of that money, of course, goes back in the communities, and some of us go home with turkeys and all kinds of other prizes, but they're always a great time to get out and talk to the community. This past Saturday, December the 3rd, I attended the St. Helens Catholic Women's League Christmas Tea. They always put a great deal of effort into that, and it's a very enjoyable afternoon. Today, before we came here, we had a little tour of the Prince greenhouses to see their Christmas amaryllis, 50,000 square feet of greenhouse, 80,000 bulbs. They are the largest growers of cut amaryllis in North America, and they're right here in Lincoln. So it's there's never any shortage of activities. And now on to West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and this is one of a regular update that to you on progress at West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. And it's important that we all look to what the board and the advisory committee are achieving, both in terms of improvements aesthetically and to building condition, as well as the addition of a CT scanner for diagnostics closer to home. And as these upgrades are very important, we must recognize them as real progress to the whole project, even though we await final approval for the new facility. You will recall that the president of Hamilton Health Sciences, Rob McIsaac, made several public presentations. There were several public meetings. They were all extremely well attended. And he explained at least one what the new diagnostic and care facilities would include. And I want to remind you that those items are still on the table. A 24-hour emergency, where right at the moment there's about 25,000 visits a year. Normal maternal and child delivery suites. There's about 1,000 babies born here a year. The third part is the community surgery component that will serve not only West Niagara, but also clients of Hamilton Health Sciences who will travel to Grimsby for care, just as we will travel to Hamilton for our complex care needs. And in the midst of all of this, it is also a medical teaching site, and there are many students from the Niagara Health System that are in our family doctor clinics and at the hospital. The most important component, I believe, is the community medicine component, which for most of us means access to a family doctor office. That may also include nurse practitioners and access to healthcare educators and referrals to physiotherapists and dietitians. And it also includes support in the area of healthy aging and seniors care with specialty clinics and advanced diagnostics. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to advise you that the West Niagara mayors met last week with members of West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Advisory Board, including the medical advisor, and we reinforced the concerns that we are hearing from you about the delay in approval and about your concerns for the future of healthcare in West Niagara. The organization of community healthcare in West Niagara is second to none in Ontario. We are well served by group medical practices where physicians have hospital privileges and also rotate in the emergency department to ensure continuous care for you and your families. And this is the model we expect going forward. As mayors, we strongly advocate the expansion of the group practice model to ensure that our communities remain competitive when new investors are looking for a place to set up business and a great place to live and work and play. And so you can expect in the weeks and months ahead that each mayor will be addressing its own community, their own community, that we will be meeting very soon with the LHIN, and we will delegate to the Ministry of Health and to Minister Hotchkiss, and we will be strong advocates for West Niagara Healthcare because we know it is the best model for you and your families. And in the meantime, we want you to be confident that progress is being made to improve conditions in the hospital, that diagnostic services are going to be improved, but also that at a political level, we are now adding our voices as mayors and councils to yours to get the final approval of a 21st century health facility for West Niagara, and to have that done without delay. So I thank you very much this evening for your attention. Remember, you live in Lincoln, where everyone strives to be a good neighbor and where children are encouraged to achieve their very best. The next item on the agenda is the Regional Councilors Report, and I have one item to report, and that is that in addition to the 1% budget increase that was given as guidance to the staff, that this Thursday evening, that there will be an additional motion coming forward to increase, to add a 1% special levy for infrastructure at the regional level. And councillors, I will start with Councillor McPherson. Do you have anything to report, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of things. First of all, I attended last week the intermunicipal transit public meeting that was held here at the town of Lincoln. It's one of 4 locations that is hosting this meeting. It's the Region of Niagara that's putting this on. It was a very informative evening. I learned a lot about the current, what they call the current pilot project that has been in place for a number of years and is due to expire in May. Also, several of the options that they're looking at for intermunicipal transit were presented, and we know that this is something that's near and dear to our residents' hearts when we think about the lack of intermunicipal transit in our town right now. So it fit right in with the plans that we've got to move ahead with a form of transit. I also, as Maryston mentioned, was part of the council delegation to Ottawa to meet with a company and local investors to look at a multi-use sports and recreation facility. It was certainly good to see it firsthand and talk with the representatives from TMSI and also a member of the City of Ottawa staff to discuss the potential for such a facility to come to Lincoln. And I look forward to the report that is scheduled to be coming to the Sport, Recreation, and Culture Committee this Wednesday on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to, if you don't mind, Councillor Rangim, I'm going to ask Councillor Pachariva to speak next because he may also want to address the visit to Ottawa, and I just would like a little continuity with that. Councillor Pachariva?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, it was, I think it was a very exciting day that we spent in Ottawa, seeing this sports dome firsthand and actually talking with the TMSI people. They're not rookies to this, having 12 of these facilities around the city of Ottawa and owning and operating them, and developing the project from the ground up and being able to refine it over time, knowing how much infrastructure is needed to go in the ground to hold up the dome, the length of the turf, the life expectancy of it, the life expectancy of the dome. And then also, as Councillor McPherson said, it was great having the person from the City of Ottawa there talking about the relationship that the city has with this P3 group, how it works, how it's very symbiotic, and usually the only issue that ever comes up is when some snow needs to be removed. So it was quite encouraging. We did take a drive and visit one of the facilities in the East End. The one that we visited, the neighbors actually, wanted it painted a tan color. They thought it would fit better against the backdrop of the community. But when we went to the East End and looked at it, that dome is your typical white color, and against the background of the sky was almost indiscernible. The brown one actually stood out a heck of a lot more. In this facility, it was going to get hopping around 4 o'clock, and it runs for about 6 or 7 months of the year. Indoor golf during the day. They have seniors walking, of course, indoor soccer, indoor football, lacrosse, you name it, and it was a beehive of activity. And the local investors have kind of done their due diligence, reached out to a bunch of local groups. Evidently there's a need, and I just contacted Mr. Ungaro on the weekend to say, could you please share with me the list of the contacts that you have, because I think I might know some others. And I was perusing the list, and there are some people that I know that would probably be interested, and I'm going to share that with him. So I look forward to the report on Wednesday, and I shared with Mr. Kirkopoulos the facilities in Niagara right now. There was an article in the St. Catharines Standard on Saturday evening or Friday evening about the Young's Sports Complex in Welland having new ownership. It's the people that operate a bunch of the facilities like the Budweiser Gardens in London, and going to take a different tack on it. But I think part of the losses that they were experiencing were based on debt payments and refinancing. But their facility isn't as big as the one we looked at. They've got a lot of outdoor turf fields there. The one in Niagara Falls is smaller, and the one about the same size is Players Paradise in Stony Creek, but evidently that's a little too far for our residents. So I really look forward to the report on Wednesday night.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Njima, please.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. I was sorry to miss the tour of Prinz greenhouses today. I was at a chamber meeting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the chamber has been up to recently. On December 1st, was held a hydro energy forum, and there were a couple of very interesting speakers there speaking about the cost of energy, and a very relevant topic for business in Niagara and all over Ontario. David Arkell from 360 Degree Energy Solutions, he talked about strategies and alternate ways to deal with high energy costs. The costs are indeed very high in Niagara, and they're increasing, and they have a very real effect on many of Niagara's businesses and their ability to remain profitable. He recommended looking forward and focusing on becoming sustainable and embracing green energy alternatives. Also speaking was Tim Clutterbuck. He's the CEO of ASW Steel in Welland. Hydro prices are very important to them because they melt steel with electricity. He talked about accidentally operating at peak time for, I think it was an hour, and wasted several $1 million. One thing that they've been able to do, they were able to look forward when they saw that energy prices were beginning to rise, and they were able to organize to the point that they are able to operate mostly in off-peak hours, which is not always the case with a lot of businesses, as we know. Bottom line is high energy prices are here to stay for the very significant future, and they'll continue to affect decisions on how industry does business in Ontario, and of course what industry does business in Ontario. And the chamber, as a chamber, we're going to play a role in helping bring stakeholders and other knowledgeable people together to find solutions. And there was clearly a lot of interest because it was sold out, and hopefully we'll have another one, and we'll tell you about it when it comes up again.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Pachariva, did you have any other items?
Actually, just the Prinz greenhouse tour that I went on this evening, and I attended the St. Mark's Bazaar on November the 26th. So it was quite a busy day. A lot of people there, a lot of people selling crafts, and the $3,000 was raised by to go to the debt consolidation at the church.
Very good. Councillor McMillan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any committee activities to comment on tonight, but I would like to just take a minute and say thank you very much for what you had to say tonight about West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. I am really encouraged by what you had to say. This is a long, long overdue project. It's been over a decade that we've been waiting for the province to act on this. So, as I say, I'm really encouraged by what you've said, and I want to thank you very much for that.
Well, I think the mayors really feel that we can no longer sit back. It is far too long, and we can't expect the board to be carrying the full load, and so we're prepared now to step up in a very formal way and go forward with them.
Thank you very much for your efforts and the West Lincoln mayors. Thank you.
Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Just a couple of quick comments. As Councillor McPherson already alluded to, I as well attended the Intermunicipal Transit Regional Meeting. I think Councillor McPherson pretty well summed up the evening. Just something that I wanted to add, there was it was fairly well attended. There was a number of councillors and active transportation intermunicipal transit members from Grimsby attended, and so they were in attendance that evening. And there was a young fellow from, I believe it was Niagara College, who made an interesting comment in terms of the fact that Niagara College and Brock University have been subsidizing municipal transit for a long, long time, to the tune of millions of dollars. That is going to come to an end. So if we think we have a mobility problem now, it is only going to get worse. And I think one thing that I want to just mention is, we have been quite active in traveling up to Grimsby to look at the workshops to see, what Lincoln can do to work with West Lincoln and Grimsby to join some municipal transit up at this end. So I think we just make sure we don't confuse people. It's great that the region is working on this, but certainly the municipalities at the western end of the region need to continue to communicate what our desire and what our residents' desire is. So it was a good evening. As the mayor commented, we were down in Jordan at the turkey raffle on Friday. It was a great evening, and I also want to comment on your comments with regards to the hospital. As this council's member of West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Advisory Committee, I'm really glad to see that we're going public. I think we missed an opportunity at AMO to get in front of the health minister, so I'm glad to see that we're going to have a delegation to the LHIN. And I think we're very, very fortunate. We need to continue to remember that we're probably in a good position, that we're part of Hamilton Health Sciences now, and that it gives us the strength and the voice with Mr. McIsaac, and we need to keep pushing forward, keep it, and be very vocal as we move forward. So thank you, Mayor Easton, for that.
You're very welcome, and I absolutely agree with you. I think our relationship with Hamilton Health Sciences has put us in a very, very strong position. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. I also am very encouraged by your words regarding West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. Finally, I think we're going to start moving in the right direction there. I don't have a lot to report tonight other than the Canada 150 committee that I'm working on. There still have been some requests for the tulip bulbs, so I just want to announce that we no longer have any more tulip bulbs. They have all been planted, and I think I can throw this number out. We actually planted 169,000 bulbs. The goal was 150,000, but I can't wait for spring to see how many actually come up. So folks out there, sorry, we are finally out of the bulbs. There are no longer any more bulbs. So other than that, I don't have anything else to report at this time. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I also was at the Holland delegation follow-up meeting to give input towards creating that report. So I'm looking forward to adding more to that, because there's lots of exciting stuff coming from that. Certainly, last Friday we were at the Jordan Fire Hall. Turkeys were rolling, door prizes were flying. It was a great evening, and it was well attended as per usual. I made my usual donation. This year I didn't have to lug a turkey home, so I was actually pleased by that. Saturday, myself and the mayor actually attended Niagara Peninsula Energy's Employee Appreciation Evening, and we we're lucky enough to sit at the table with Brian Wilkie, the president. And I just wanted to certainly thank NPEI. They've made some significant contributions to our Christmas lighting in the town. And so I really wanted to highlight that. And during our conversations over dinner, certainly we managed to garnish a little bit more support for some more lights. So, and also some support. They're very interested in supporting the community activities such as the Rotary Sunset Music Festival for 2017. So there'll be some conversation in and around that as well coming forward. Anyway, it was a very great evening. Certainly nice to see all the employees and retirees and employees, and they were having a great time. And tonight, obviously, we went to Prince Greenhouses for the tour from Fabiola, who was our tour guide during the delegation to Holland. And I can't say thank you enough to her for her efforts in keeping us on track while we were there. So we got to see her home greenhouse, and it was pretty amazing. One other thing that I just wanted to mention is that once again, Miracle on King Street will be happening on the 17th of December. So from 10 to 3, the 12th year running, and I'm sure that'll come up again in the announcements. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Deputy Mayor Rob Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. So a whole bunch of things here and there, but just the one thing I want to start off with is it's amazing the amount of work that we do, considering even from a legislative point of view, this is the busiest time of year for us as we go through budget and all the variety of things like that. So it's really good that everybody's out in the community. I actually won some turkeys at the Beamsville raffle. I don't know, maybe they had an easier board to roll off of, but anyway, I came away with 3 turkeys from there. And, had to give one away because it looked really bad walking out with 3. I attended last Saturday morning the LMHA pancake breakfast that was going on. They're raising money for an overseas trip that one of the hockey teams is taking. So anyway, Sue and I had an opportunity to go over, and I bought her breakfast. The Holland meeting, attended that as well. I missed the Prince one this evening, and fortunately daytime job sometimes does come into play. 2 things as well. I attended the AMO meeting on behalf of our community as well as the OSUM group on November 24th and 25th. Pretty amazing some of the things that are going on within the province. I was able to come back and share a few things with Mr. Kirkopoulos on what had happened with the meeting. Some of these things will affect us in the future, so anyway, we will be having some further discussions at an appropriate meeting with that. It was also the middle of Grey Cup celebrations, so again, cheerleaders and everything from Edmonton, of all places. I have no idea why I was at the hotel with Edmonton, but tomorrow I am chairing the digital task force. And just to remind everybody, this is an initiative of the province of Ontario around digital government, and the focus of what we're trying to do is provide recommendations that focus on enabling IT capabilities for digital initiatives in municipal governments. It is not to make recommendations to the province regarding which digital services municipal governments must provide. That still comes back to our decisions on where we go to with things. But suffice it to say, there is going to be a big push at the provincial level for more work in the digital government side of things, and I think we have been doing the right thing by preparing ourselves for it. I think there's some opportunities for funding and stuff that we will be seeing coming along eventually. So again, I will be keeping everybody up to date as we enter into that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, there's no shortage of activities, which is a good sign. Councillors, we move on now to delegations, and this evening we have 3 delegations from Brock University, and I'm going to ask the first team to come up, Jessica Williams and Nicholas Fisher. Just come and sit at the table here, and Are you turning the the clerk will turn on the microphones. Mr. Kirkopoulos is going to introduce this set of delegation.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thanks for the opportunity to speak and to highlight some of the work going on with Brock University. I'm also going to ask Dr. Liette Vasseur, I think, to come up and say a few words. A number of you will recall early when I started this position, I did reach out to Brock University. I spent some time at Brock University, and I think when I came back, I joked that I got a second undergrad in agriculture and sustainability after spending, I want to say, almost 8 hours at Brock University, a number of them with Dr. Vasseur. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Vasseur is the UNESCO chair in community sustainability. She's got a number of graduate students that you'll meet today that are from her Master of Sustainability Science and Society program. I had the opportunity to sit down to talk to these students, to learn a lot from them as they take you through these presentations. I won't spend too much time talking about what they're going to present. They will take you through those presentations. I do want to acknowledge Jessica Williams, Nicholas Fisher, who are here, highlight the other teams that are here as well. Heather Van Volkenberg, Taznuva Afreen, Ashton Govan, Lydia Collis, and Megan Burbick, who are all focused on 3 different presentations, but all important to, I think, some of the work going on here in Lincoln. So I will turn it over to them, and Liette to say a few words as well.
So thank you very much, and thank you very much for leaving our groups presenting tonight. This is a first step, and I hope that this just one of the first steps for long collaboration that will exist between the town of Lincoln and Brock University, especially in relation to environmental sustainability, community sustainability, and knowing that you're pushing towards the Center of Agriculture and different other large initiatives that I think can be very prolific for the town of Lincoln. So what you see today is first groups that are coming to present with the ideas that we hope there will be way more projects that will come in the future and can contribute to the sustainability of your community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Who is leading? Jessica? Nicholas? Go ahead.
I'd like to begin by thanking you, Mayor Easton, the council, and guests that are here tonight, as well as Mike Kirkopoulos and Liette Vasseur for their continued support through the project. My name is Nicholas Fisher.
And I'm Jessica Williams.
And we're going to be speaking with you all briefly about overcoming the urban-rural divide here in the town of Lincoln. The project we sought to undertake was to confront this issue of integration between rural livelihoods and urban livelihoods in the region. As we did recognize this was a largely rural region with a lot of agricultural livelihood present in it. We began by starting to seek ideas on how we could foster participation and collaboration between both landscapes, and so we needed to define them both politically and physically. So politically, we started by recognizing that there's a great degree of restrictions and sanctions on rural land in the region due to the impositions caused by the Ontario Greenbelt, as well as the physical landscape, which we examined in 3 major aspects. The first, we looked at particularly Jordan and Vineland. We omitted Beamsville from our analysis for the case of this project, as we're looking at connecting the various communities, and Jordan and Vineland are much in a greater proximity to each other than Beamsville. Additionally, Beamsville has received a greater degree of infrastructural development and population growth that we've seen through the 2006 and 2011 Canadian census. Physically, the landscape we needed to look at, we had to look at 2 major issues: transportation routes, as has been discussed here tonight. We needed to look at trail routes, roadways, as well as urban and rural corridors that residents could use to integrate themselves between these 2 communities, as well as major land uses. So we looked at a study from the Niagara region which discussed that the 5 major land uses in the town of Lincoln, only one of them is urban residency. And so the other 4 revolved around agriculture, viticulture, or orchards, which made us recognize that there's a high need for integration between these 2 communities. So we began by looking at various case studies within Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom as common issues regarding urban-rural integration. The first most common theme in these case studies was an antiquated perception of rural life. So these case studies often voice that urban residents sought to see rural life as underdeveloped, traditional, or they romanticize this pastoral form of life instead of recognizing it as a traditional livelihood, as well as we needed to assess the accessibility between these landscapes. So particularly one case study from the United Kingdom focusing on young adults as well as elderly populations noted that the need for safer roadways as well as active transportation networks would increase accessibility between these two landscapes and foster greater integration. And when I'm talking about active transportation, we're talking about human-powered forms of transportation. So biking, walking, rollerblading, or other services provided by public committees. We chose to focus on recreational development for two major reasons. The first, the research led us to the conclusion that recreational development fosters a higher degree of leisure integration and which promotes a higher degree of human well-being, both physically and mentally, as it acts as a diversion from stress as well as has mental and physical health benefits. Additionally, we focused on recreational development due to its higher degree of social integration. So actually getting rural and urban residents into a common public place, whether it's through a service or an institution such as a recreational building, park, trailway system, something like that, fostered a greater cultural appreciation in many case studies and a greater understanding of different cultural values.
Okay, so we have two proposed solutions. Both of them have to do with active transportation. The first is a bike share program. So this is a service that can be used by the public or by locals or tourists, which they are able to rent and use the bike service and pick them up and drop them off at different locations. The bike rack stations would be electronic ports, and the payment options would be dependent upon the preference of the townspeople and the users. So it could be a daily, hourly, or yearly rate, dependent on the preferences. We'll talk about locations later of where we think would be best fit. I'll quickly allude to a case in Boulder, Colorado. Many people think that bike share programs are only good to be implemented in big cities like Toronto, Montreal, New York, but Boulder, Colorado has a population about double the size of Lincoln, so not too much bigger, and they have successfully implemented a bike share program with 22 stations and 150 bikes. The second is the implementation of green lanes. So green lanes are much like bike lanes, but they're different in that there's a physical barrier between the motor vehicles and the cyclists. This increases safety, leisure, and accessibility, and it's primarily useful for younger families as well as elder population that is prevalent and violent. It also increases nature and recreation as well as it's a pivotal point of transportation. This will access the connectivity gap between the urban and rural landscapes, and also the accessibility gap between the agriculture and viticulture.
So as Jessica discussed, we do have some suggestions for proposed docking stations, is what we're calling them, within Jordan and Vineland. The four we proposed are the 20 Valley Public School, the Foodland Downtown Vineland, Balls Falls Conservation Area, and the Jordan Village Merchants Association. The reason we chose these is they're public hubs. These are where people are spending a lot of time in both of these communities. However, as Jessica alluded to, the concentration of the bike docking stations as well as their dispersal amongst the two communities really depends on their use. So should the town seek to implement this network of active transportation primarily for its residents, it would need a higher concentration, as studies have shown that the higher concentration helps people get from point A to B, as residents normally aren't returning back to their beginning point with a bike share program. However, one centrally located docking station would be beneficial for a tourist economy, as long as there was parking nearby and tourists could return the bikes at the end of the day.
So we have four major expected outcomes. The first is higher social integration. So we would expect the implementation of one or both of these solutions would boost participation of varying age groups and social demographics in rural and urban Lincoln. The next is public health benefits. So we would lessen the risk of emissions on health risks by taking less vehicles on the road by adding bicycles. Also, a more active society is beneficial for health and wellness, both physically and mentally. The next is environmental benefits. So again, reducing the amount of motor vehicles on the road will reduce emissions of greenhouse gases from the exhaust, which are major contributors to pollution. It would also support environmental initiatives in Lincoln and reduce the ecological footprint. Lastly is the outcome of tourism, boost in tourism economy. So there is an undiscovered market of tourists that could come to Lincoln. So we would imitate the Niagara on the Lake kind of program that they have going there. Although theirs is not a bike share program, they do have bike rentals in which people use to get to various fruit and vegetable stands, as well as the wineries. So that would be well implemented here with the wineries and fruit stands. It would also encourage tourists to spend their money in local economy, boosting the economy. So for conclusions, these solutions would boost the integration of urban and rural livelihoods in Jordan and Vineland, improve participation in rural business and life worlds, reintroduce the importance of recreational development, and bridge the social gaps in the landscape.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll offer the opportunity to councillors in the event they have any questions. Any questions? Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Jessica and Nicholas, thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Bernay and myself are trying to establish, and we have established, and we will be having our first active transportation meeting in the next couple of weeks. So the fact that you even said active transportation 4 times gave me goosebumps. So that is fantastic. I was going to come out and search you out before. I didn't want to scare you. So so thank you so much for that. Bike share, you mentioned bike share. Mr. Kirkopoulos used to be communications and in the mayor's office in the city of Hamilton that have a bike share program. And I took a picture on one of my first trips and I said, when can we get this? So thank you for identifying that. Sometimes my ideas are out in left field, but you give me a little bit of validation tonight. The green lanes, I think they're dynamite. They're part of complete streets. And when we had our presentation for the redevelopment of Prudhome's, it was that actually picture that you had from your presentation tonight of the physical separation that we were looking for. That's part of that. So it gives people a much better sense of either cycling, rollerblading, you name it, and getting them involved. Councillor McPherson has been big on this too, the linkage between Vineland and Jordan. Years ago, we applied for a grant for a bunch of bike infrastructure. Now, we didn't get the one, and what it was a bike slew that connected the end of 4th Avenue to the subdivision in Vineland, which would make a much better connection rather than going through the hollow. So we're constantly going back to that and revisiting it. So thank you for identifying that. And based on a tourist economy, too, that you had suggested the bike share thing, we're in the midst of redeveloping Jordan, urbanizing it, and doing 19th and Main Street and building Snur Lane, and the fire hall's there. And there's going to be a brand new parking lot that's developed, and there's washrooms there. So one of the conflicts, though, that you could bump up against is the cyclists tend to come, they park in the village, are gone for 5 or 6 hours and take up prime real estate. We'd rather relocate them once this area is all done to the fire hall parking. They can park there. They're close enough to, take a walk into the village afterwards. But the infrastructure's there for them, washrooms, like a station, where you can check your bike, do the air. So again, thank you for doing this. We're not that far off, so I think it'd be pretty cool that these things will come to pass sooner than later. So keep up the good work, and thank you very much.
All right, we have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I actually have some questions. Thank you to Jessica and Nicholas. An excellent presentation. It happens to be the ward that Councillor Thompson and I reside in, and there is a lot of discussion about how we get people around in that neck of the town. So it's very timely that you come in and talk to us. A question about, not sure if the scope of your project looked at the elevation changes that happen within Jordan and Balls Falls and Vineland, and is that taken into account when you look at a bike sharing program?
We haven't looked at it in any depth, unfortunately.
Okay.
I can only suggest that especially with Lincoln's positioning between Niagara Escarpment and the various landscapes here, that a bike share program might be something difficult for some residents with the elevation changes.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as actually noting the differences, we haven't, no.
Okay. And then just to pick up on Councillor Pachariva's comments, the green lanes, love them. If we could put them into play, it'd be outstanding. And I don't know, again, if your project looked at where they might happen within the town.
I was looking at different placements on King Street. We didn't come up with any concrete suggestions. Also, Mountain Ave, I believe, I was looking at. I don't have them written down, but yeah, those were my two.
Downtown Vineland, to try to put a designated lane there, maybe on Victoria, if we had something on Victoria.
Especially within the communities, it would foster a greater participation in residential usage of the bike share. Not entirely sure if it would really benefit the tourist economy as much, but it would definitely increase, as the studies we've looked at, the green lanes, Jessica I know has some statistics, but definitely increased ridership in the cities that they're by up to 117%.
171 was the highest increase, and the lowest instance of increase was 21% of cyclists, and in all instances, obviously, there's an increase in cycling, and especially in female cyclists. Yeah.
And I would assume that if it's a bike share program, that the town would supply the bikes for bike share?
Yes.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, thank you very much for coming in and sharing this with us. I'm just blown away. I mean, certainly our trip to Holland as a trade delegation opened my eyes to the bicycle, which I sort of had forgotten since I was a kid. Both, I mean, in Holland, if you don't have a bicycle, I don't think you live there. Certainly they had the bike share programs and all sorts of rental possibilities as well. My question is around next steps with your project. Is this the end of the project? Is there more project coming? It's very exciting stuff, but I'm kind of wanting more. So I'm hoping there is. And in your experience with what you've been doing from a research standpoint, how is it dealt with regards to, obviously we're a seasonal area where there's winter. How does that get dealt with in the bike share sort of scenario? I mean, I know in the larger cities maybe it's not as difficult with snow and stuff, but this is not downtown Toronto for sure.
As far as seasonal bike share programs, have come only across one study from the United States, which did note not a significant decrease, but about a 19% decrease in ridership. Depends on how much snow coverage. I've just moved down here, so I'm not actually quite familiar with the region in the wintertime. As far as your first question, Our class is actually over this semester, so our project does end, unfortunately. But
Pass it on
you
to
can
you.
blame Liette for that.
Madam Mayor, or we can thank her to continue the process. So that's great. I really appreciate you guys coming forward with this. It's fantastic to see you guys looking at this kind of thing. So thank you so much.
Well, I mean, they've done the literature review. That in itself is a big undertaking. Takes hours, right? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I think if the professor can give you all Ds, you can come back and do the course over one more time. It'd be great. Not that would help us. Yeah, I was just going to mention, along with what Councillor Thompson was saying, our trip to Holland really showed how they make use of paths, and mind you, it's part of that society. Okay, so if continuing on and looking at this further, part of the thing is to figure out how do we educate, how do we actually persuade people this is the right way to go. What are the amenities that we have to put in place to go and do this type of thing? So that probably would be a logical next step in the study and trying to give sort of a final conclusion on things. So anyway, thank you.
And Councillor McMillan.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Jessica and Nicholas, for being here this evening. I think it's an exciting, very exciting concept, and your timing couldn't be better, I think, because, and you may already be aware that the town and the region are in partnership of the upgrading of the area of downtown Vineland, and also the intersection at Jordan just at the top of the hill. So with that in the planning stages now, and you're coming forward with these kinds of exciting ideas, maybe the blending of the two can really bring some real changes to that part of our town. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also want to add my apologies, Councillor Brunet. It's early in the evening and I've insulted you already.
No problem. Thank you, Mary Easton. So if I've connected the dots correctly, I believe that your professor was in attendance at some of our workshops this summer and is probably one of the main reasons why you guys are all here tonight, because I think our CAO and Professor Vasseur have made a connection. So again, as Councillor Pachariva has articulated so well, that we're very excited. I mean, we're right in the middle of launching our active transportation. And so, this information is really, really good. And we hope that we can keep the dialogue so that we can have participation with future students as we move this active transportation forward, because we're going to need some real insight to launch this. One of the questions, I was wondering if you go back to one of the slides that you looked at in terms of where you were looking at putting the state, yes. And I was just wondering if there was any particular reason, or if you did look at and then decided to remove it. That's Charles Daly Park. We have a lot of plans for Charles Daly Park in the future, and it is right on the waterfront trail. So to me, I would have thought that Charles Daly Park possibly might be a location. So just a question as to whether you looked at that, or whether it was an oversight, or if you did look at it, maybe a reason why it's not on this location.
So I'm actually unaware of where Charles Daly Park lies within this. What we were looking at why we suggested these primary locations were just to give an idea. So the Balls Falls one is actually the outlier of the group, which is one that centers more towards the tourist economy, to have one centered at where people are coming for in the region. The others, we were just looking at major hubs of like human movement and gathering places within Jordan and Vineland, and that's kind of where we're going there. But definitely a waterfront trail and a park that's visited often would be an amazing place to implement one of the docking stations.
Okay, great. I just was really curious as to whether you did look at it and there was a reason why it wasn't here, but that's fine. So again, as the rest of the councilors have already commented, thank you very much for your work, and we look forward to working with Professor Vasseur in the near future. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you very much. All right, now we'll call up group number 2, and the subject this time is fostering community engagement through landscape connectivity and revitalization. And we have Tanuva Afreen, Ashton Govan, and Heather Van Volkenberg. Thanks, Kurt. Welcome, students, and who will begin?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. And
Just pull them. You can pull them closer, and
Okay.
the
Can you
clerk
hear me
will
now?
turn them on. Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Easton and council and guests for giving us this opportunity this evening to speak to you. So our Our project, as Mayor Easton said, is fostering community engagement through landscape connectivity and revitalization. And my name is Heather. This is Tasnuva and Ashton. And Ashton's going to speak a bit to the locations we're looking at.
Okay, so the focus of our project and our presentation is on the town of Lincoln, but more specifically on the mobile home community of Golden Horseshoe Estates and the community of Beamsville. Those are indicated on the maps there. So just to give a brief introduction, Golden Horseshoe Estates is a small community. Its distance is roughly 2.5 kilometers from the community of Beamsville. There are several sections of agricultural land that separate the two. There are two main roads of access for residents of this community. There is John Street, which is to the south of the community, and then there is Green Lane, which is to the north.
So if we take a closer look at the map, it's our try to show in the we created this map to show the local amenities. So the little black flags are schools. The blue dot is the community center. The black pentagon is the supermarkets. The red star is our designated Golden Horseshoe State. So the reason we created this map is to give you a visual idea, like approximate distance from the Golden Horseshoe to the regular amenities, which is about 2 to 2.5 kilometers. And now Ashton will talk about some of the findings we've made in our visits to that community.
So in our research and observational visits, we have outlined three major challenges that are faced by the community in local areas. The first one is safety. Safety for the residents of the community to walk around the community and outside, safety for vehicular travel. The second one is disconnection. That's emphasized by the physical separation of the community from the community of Beamsville and the several agricultural areas that exist between the two. And the third one is vegetation. We want to emphasize a desire and how important it is to maintain the biodiversity of the area and the ecological integrity and the protection of native species. So some of our observations in relation to safety, myself and my two other colleagues, we conducted some observational visits of the area. In one of those visits, we actually walked down John Street, which is to the south of the community in question. In the span of 5 minutes, we noticed 4 pedestrians walking from Beamsville to the Golden Horseshoe Estate community. So at that point, we were able to determine that this was the most favorable route by residents of Golden Horseshoe and Beamsville to access their two different communities. The rural setting of the community poses some challenges. There are no sidewalks on the roads, on John Street and Green Lane Road. There are no bike lanes. There are no street lights. We thought it would be in the interest of safety, a good idea to put in a four-way stop at the intersection of Son Road and John Street. And many of our safety observations stem from a desire for the residents of this community to be able to access Beamsville via bicycle or walking. Also, on our observational visit, when we saw these pedestrians, we noticed that as cars travel down John Street, they actually move slightly over into the other lane to provide a greater degree of safety for the vehicle and for the pedestrian.
Okay, and just to address a little bit of the ecological observations we had during our visit, so there were some concerns as to the vegetation that was present. There are noxious weeds, which is not uncommon for rural environments. An example of this would be pigweed and bull thistle. Now, this compromises how native species perform when there's an overabundance of this type of species. In addition to this, there were milkweed present in the ditches along Son Road. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have the resources at the time to identify the exact species, but there are species at risk in Ontario that are milkweed. So this is something else that would need to be addressed in the future. The other species that was of a little bit concern was if you go to the GHE community, they have two parklands, or what we termed parklands. There's the southern field and the northern field, which there's two pictures at the bottom of the slide here. Both fields are relatively barren. The southern field, however, does have a string of mature trees, but some of these trees we observed to have been infested with the emerald ash borer, which I'm sure there's a familiarity with this species and the destruction it causes. So there's the potential that they will have to be removed. From a mechanical standpoint, we noticed that the northern field, the ditches had recently been graded. So what the future plans are for this particular spot are unclear, but we would like to note that the grading has taken away from the natural biodiversity that existed in the ditch beforehand, which opens the community up for potential wind damage, flooding, and also disrupts the connections and buffers that exist between this land and the road and the agricultural field beyond. So our proposal, what we decided to suggest in terms of mitigating some of these things that Ashton and I have brought to your attention, we would like to implement sidewalks or bike lanes along John Street in between Son Road and the Bartlett Road area so that residents have safe access to the Beamsville core from where they are. A four-way stop, Ashton mentioned, is a way to break up the speed of the traffic that is on John Street. It is slotted as a 60 kilometer an hour. However, observations showed that traffic does move quicker than this, and a stop sign would actually help mitigate this. Street lights, as it is a rural environment, walking at night in this type of environment can be dangerous without a lit area, so that would be our suggestion for that. And as for an ecological suggestion, we're looking to enhance the current buffer zones, so the separations between the agricultural fields and the roadways, the parklands and the roadways, by implementing native vegetation or removing invasive species. We would also like to implement tree planting and tree replacement in the case of the southern area of green space.
So as we already have noticed, a few of the members in this room acknowledges the benefits of active transportation. Going after that, it's our little initiation to pair it with the policies that's already available for the town of Lincoln in the official plan. So the official plan, the town of Lincoln acknowledges the benefits of active transportation to improve the connectivity and access to other facilities in the Lincoln destinations to people using various methods of mobility. So it also enables the greater freedom to elderly people and influences residents of all ages future travel patterns, which also contributes to like the lowering carbon footprint in local and broader community context. So in our second proposal, Town of Lincoln also takes strong stance to conservation of woodland and recognizes the buffers between used lands and natural features are a great resource to enhance natural diversity and communities' aesthetic values. Adding our proposal in the planning will positively incorporate the values and benefits of safe accessibility and preservations of woodland to natural diversity. So if we take a look at the Schedule D3, the red line goes across. It's the John Street. It's another our visual initiation to show how the variegated black and brown, these are the like initiated plans. And what about John Street is this is a signed road, which we, many of us know that these are numbered roads that connects one end to the other end of the city. And these routes are actually designed and planned in a way they have the opportunity to make the bike lanes or sidewalks. So that's why we chose John Street as a potential to have the four-way stops on John and Sun, as well as the bike lane or a sidewalk to connect with the Beamsville core, which will also correlate with the future plan of the GO Transit coming into this area, as well as the Niagara Region Transit making their hub for this area as well. So now Heather will talk about some transferability of our plans.
Okay, so just as where we can use these plans or these ideas in other parts of Lincoln, because obviously that's of interest if you can maximize a planning process. The first thing we were looking at was Jordan Valley, which was brought up earlier. We're looking at King Street, so when you're going into the bottom valley there from the village of Jordan, also connecting to Vineland. As many of you probably are aware, this is a treacherous area to walk and bike as well, actually, which also lends to danger for drivers of automobiles trying to get around people and movement through here. So I don't think it's unheard of that this needs to be addressed here, and that would be our suggestion, is to add some sort of sidewalk to this area. The second area of interest would be Bomberry Park, which is in Beamsville. This is a representation of several little green pockets that are found throughout the city and possibly in the Jordan and Vineland area as well, but we just looked at Beamsville in this particular instance. So these small pockets of land are mainly grass covered. They're not big enough for actual sporting facilities or sport fields, and they also lack any type of playground, and in this case benches for sitting. They would act as excellent corridors for wildlife movement and connectivity in the environment, and could be looked at as a regreening opportunity. The last area that we looked at was Green Lane Road, in between the Bartlett Road and Ontario Street. So it's actually in the center photo here where you see the power lines. It recently underwent upgrades. I'm assuming that's for probably when they installed the subdivision in the back there. Now you can see just by looking at the picture that the northern buffer against the rail strip is nicely vegetated, but then it's quite barren in the south here in behind the residential fences, so there's potential there to also provide for connectivity of land. So at this point in time, we'd like to thank everyone for giving us this opportunity and open the floor to any questions.
All right, thank you very much, councillors. Are there any questions of this team? Councillor Majima.
Not so much a question, but thank you for your presentation. And yeah, the emerald ash borer is a problem. It's a problem everywhere, and we do have a program. We're going around, and a few years ago, the trees around Lincoln were tagged and put in order for when they're going to come down, when they're going to be replaced. And I'm not sure what the status of those trees were there that you pointed out, but it's a sad thing. But it's a little bit of a lesson to learn, because when you replant a variety of trees. So when things like emerald ash borer come along, severe changes in weather, you have a little bit of a buffer against losing everything at once. And That's a very sad thing. And thank you for your comments about Bonbury Park. You make good points. And we are going to be undertaking a master plan for our parks in Lincoln I think in this coming year, I think. And we'll certainly keep your suggestions in mind for that park in particular. Thank you.
I have Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thanks for coming in, guys. I really appreciate it. You did mention that there was some grading activity that went on in the ditches along Sand. I'm going to suggest that you actually suggested that essentially the native species was taken out of it. How do you sort of balance proper ditching and infrastructure preserving, like road preservation, because ditching is a huge part of maintaining road infrastructure, with that biodiversity piece? How do you see that coming to the table?
Well, without knowing exactly what it is their future plan is for the grade, it's a little difficult. Not being overly familiar with the grading process as it is, but I would suggest having a plan in place for implementing replanting with native species once this is finished, and possibly monitoring to make sure there's a foothold afterwards.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but we have to actually keep the ditches clean in order to get the water off the roads. So how do you balance that? I mean, I understand you want to create a buffer zone. I'm sort of assuming that between the road, the ditch, and
yes,
the area.
So the ditch in mention that we're speaking of it's not. It was very shallow. It's a very shallow area to begin with. So I'm not sure how much of an issue flooding is or could potentially be, but with such a shallow system, it's going to, the erosion would be large in a short period of time, because it's almost flush with the actual landscape now. And if you look at previous pictures, it was deeper. So as for how you're going to mitigate that, the scope of our project didn't specifically address that, but it's definitely something that would be worrisome, because it is something that needs to be implemented, but maybe in a better way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Through you to the delegation, thank you so much for coming in. This is just a fabulous partnership, and getting a fresh look with fresh eyes on our community. You maybe see things that we oversee. We've been here for so many years that you don't see it in the same way. And the Golden Horseshoe Estates, I was very interested that you picked that area, because that's actually in my ward, as well as Councillor McMillan. And I never really thought about the landscape disconnection, how they are disconnected. And just, your comments around safety, street lights, a four-way stop, sidewalks, that's not something I really thought about until tonight. And they're all very, very good comments, and something that we really should be looking at on how we connect that community to the larger area, and how we can facilitate them safely to move along the road and come into the Beamsville area, or they're in Beamsville, but come into the shopping area. So very, very good report, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much, and I think the Greater Golden Horseshoe, I'll call it that, the Horseshoe, the trailer park, it's a very good example of planning of the past, where small developments would take place outside of the urban boundaries, and no one really thought about it. And many of the people that live there are seniors, and it really does make them quite isolated from the community. So thank you very much for those observations, and for all of your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now Lydia Colas and Megan Burback, if you would come forward. And Lydia and Megan are going to be talking about the landscape considerations in the Prudhome's development. And we have the developers here tonight, so they're going to be very interested in what you had to say. Please go ahead.
Hi, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mayor Easton, council, and guests, and for all those who have supported us along the way. My name is Megan. And I'm Lydia. And we're here to talk about the Prudence development. So the Prudence development is a waterfront property that has been underutilized for the past 10 years, roughly. With that, it's about brownfield. So it is outside of the scope of the Greenbelt, which makes it an excellent property to be revitalized. And with revitalization, it allows for open space to be created, as well as green space to be preserved for the future. So our presentation is about sustainable development within this property. So far, planning has been underway. The MMM group, along with the planning partnership, have been working with the local community to integrate workshops for this development. We attended the last workshop where the emerging concept plan was addressed to the community. From this plan, what we would like to propose is 5 questions that should be considered to make this development more sustainable.
So the first question that we looked at in order to investigate how to maximise the sustainability of this development was with regard to how do we minimise its environmental impact. Urbanisation brings vast change to the landscape, and the natural environment provides services that humans rely on. We call these ecosystem services. Urban development threatens the ability of the environment to provide these ecosystem services, such as local climate regulation, the maintenance of hydrological cycles to avoid flooding, and important benefits to human health and well-being. So we must look to address how to maintain these ecosystem services alongside this development. Now, scientists have sought how best to achieve this, and predominantly their results have indicated the same thing, that compact development is best for minimising the environmental impact. By building high-density housing, this allows the preservation of large areas of green space, and this green space holds far higher ecosystem service value than housing of any density, provided that this green space hosts an array of species. So, in light of this, what we suggest to this preferred concept plan is that the density of some of this housing that's currently shaded in yellow and labelled as low density is increased to a medium density, so that some of that green space can be spared. And alongside this, we suggest that active restoration is undertaken in order to create a diverse array of vegetation. Landcare Niagara offers an urban tree planting program, so we suggest possibly partnering with them to ensure that appropriate species are selected for the site. And establishing a diverse array of species, as already been talked about tonight, is good for providing resistance to invasive species, as well as being resilient over time. So in this way, we can ensure that those ecosystem services continue to be provided alongside the development.
Going off of this restoration of the green space, we also propose that the waterfront has some sort of a restoration undergone. The tendency throughout history has to have the shoreline for social characteristics. While it should be a unique and attractive shoreline that allows for access to recreation, we suggest that the environment should not be disregarded. When it is concrete and straight, it has places like Toronto on the International Joint Commission's list for 42 areas of concern for the Great Lakes. Instead of it being straight and concrete, if you look at the picture below, you can kind of somewhat see it should be gradual, made with more organic materials to have shoreline stabilization for the future, as it will promote more longevity of the shoreline.
So the second question that we looked to investigate was how do we make this development resilient in the face of future weather extremes and climate change? Firstly, during high wind events, Lake Ontario is subjected to large waves which can breach the shoreline. So it's concerning that in a portion of the preferred plan, which is under this tree. The housing is actually very close to the lake. However, the aforementioned increase in the density of some of that low-density housing could allow for that housing to be pulled back from the lake, increasing that buffer zone. This would reduce the risk of infrastructure damage in times of high wind events, and it would reduce the wind to which residents are exposed when they're moving in and out of those properties. Secondly, the area is already subjected to events of heavy rainfall, and these are expected to increase in magnitude and in frequency with future climate change. To ensure resilience against these events, the site must have the capacity for water infiltration. Urbanization typically increases surface runoff because you replace green spaces with concrete, and that doesn't absorb much water. So, as we've previously talked about, this increase in green space, which when vegetated does have very high capacity to absorb that water following events of heavy rainfall, would ensure that the area would not be flooded in those events. Thirdly, the area is expected to be subjected to increased temperatures in the future. Amongst many other things, these increased temperatures will increase the rate of chemical reactions which lead to the corrosion of building materials. So care needs to be taken this time to select appropriate materials that are resistant to that process. And in this way, we hope that the development could be made resilient to these future climate changes. So the third question that we looked at was, how do we maximize the health and the well-being of the future residents of Prudhomes? Again, it's green space which is integral to this because it provides important physical and psychological benefits. The proximity of residents to this green space is important, and so ensuring that there is a shoreline path to allow residents to move from the eastern portion of the site, which is currently hidden in this picture, to allow them to get to those larger green spaces, because there's not a huge amount of green space in that southeastern portion of the site. Backyards are also important for providing this access to green space, and while the increase in density that we're suggesting in these low-density areas might reduce the availability of that, this doesn't necessarily have to happen. We suggest possibly following the design of a development in the UK, which is the sketches is on the bottom of this slide, which sought to build sort of medium-density housing. And the backyards were shared between residents, so there was still that access to large areas of green space, and then each dwelling had its own private area of outdoor space, either in the form of a courtyard or a rooftop garden. So this allowed residents to have that private access to a bit of outdoor space as well as access to larger areas. The health benefits that could be provided by these vegetated areas of green space include increased air filtration and reduced noise pollution. So installing some vegetation to separate the site from the QEW is definitely needed to buffer against that noise, and vegetation also regulates the temperature and provides shade, which is going to be important for resident health in times of high temperatures. Secondly, providing exercise facilities are going to be important for the health of those residents. There's an increasing trend of placing outdoor gym equipment in parks, which could be looked into, as well as providing an indoor gym and possibly even a swimming pool, which could be used by the rest of the community, as I know it's something that Lincoln presently lacks. Thirdly, the area must not be a food desert. There must be access to affordable, healthy food. And in order to do this, we suggest the implementation of a medium-sized grocery store, along with possibly follow the design of the area of Leslieville in Toronto, where there's predominantly independently owned stores which seek to cater for the needs of the local residents. And that is how we propose to ensure the health and well-being of these residents.
So to continue to maximize the sustainability of the planning and development, we want to consider the design and essentially ensuring that energy and water is efficiently used. So 50% of energy usage is dependent upon the design. As mentioned, materials, where the materials are placed in the side of materials should be considered in their design to ensure that water and energy is used efficiently. As suggested already, temperatures are increasing, so that will also bring about AC, also increasing in more energy. So to keep these buildings cool, one proposal is to implement the rooftop gardens as they take in solar energy through the garden's photosynthesis processes and allowing the insides of these buildings to stay a little cooler. Along or aside from the rooftop gardens, also implementing solar panels and the batteries of solar panels so that the energy that the solar panels take in can be stored and used throughout the night. Away from the energy efficiency, looking at water efficiency, looking at water recycling processes to put into some of these buildings so that water from things such as showers can be recycled and put into the toilets or for these rooftop gardens. Finally, the last thing that we considered is integrating the local community into this region. Sorry. The main area with integration with the community that we want to talk about was through transportation that has kind of already been talked about, alternative means. Two main ones is with the GO Bus and with the local transit. So implementing maybe a GO Bus terminal in this area because it is suspected that many of these residents will be commuters. They will be able to, on the GO Bus, go through between Niagara to Burlington quite easy without having to use their vehicles, which will reduce their carbon footprint and the property's carbon footprint. The implementation of this terminal will also be able to be used for people in the Victoria Shores community and greater Lincoln community. The implementation of this terminal, you can kind of see below in a picture, having it more a sustainable terminal where either solar panels or rooftop gardens is also implemented. On top of this idea of sustainable transportation for this area that some of you guys have also talked about is with the idea of the trail that will be linking along the shoreline is to having maybe a bicycle shared program that Jessica and Nick talked about, and maybe this could be at this terminal so that the greater community and the residents of this community can access the open space that will be created from this development. So with consideration of these 5 questions regarding the local landscape, we would like to suggest that the Prudhomes can be a leading sustainable development for Lincoln and the greater Niagara region. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
You had some very interesting notes, all of you, and it would be very beneficial to us if we had copies of those notes, because we would not like to lose the content of your work. Questions, councillors? Councillor Brunei.
Lydia and Megan, thank you very much for your presentation. I was just curious, how many hours would you have spent preparing this presentation over the last?
So we've been working on this project for the whole semester, so this has been going since September. So it's hard to add up all of the hours between now and then, but yeah, I don't know. We've also written reports alongside these presentations that go into more depth of everything that we've talked about tonight, so I don't know how much interest there is in getting those entire reports. I think they're between 12 and 20 pages, so they're not hugely long, but like I'm sure we could make those available if there was interest.
And when we started this, a few of the workshops were already undergo for the Prudence development, so the first one we were really able to attend was the last one that just happened, but we tried to actually hear what the Prudence developers and planners were doing.
Well, I'm really glad to hear it, and certainly glad to see over your shoulder in the audience tonight the developer sitting there, and I'm sure he was taking notes, and he's already called some arborists and some people to do the marina and all those cool things. So really appreciate the presentation and them being here tonight to hear some of the innovative ideas that you guys have brought on the table. So thank you very much, and I hope you all get A+.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much for coming in and presenting. Really, this is near and dear to myself and Councillor McPherson because it's in our ward area, and certainly we are actively engaged ongoingly with the Victoria Shores folks who are apprehensive of new development in their backyard, so to speak. So I really appreciate what you've done with this. Certainly the connection pieces between the Victoria Shores and the Prudhomme's neighborhoods to making it a viable cluster as one piece is messaging that needs to be put forward to everybody so that they get it. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm really quite impressed with the projects, all of them. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I have a question about geothermal. You didn't mention it, but in some of your other discussion papers, did you address geothermal as a possible alternative to traditional energy sources?
We looked at installing solar panels on the rooftops of these buildings, but we didn't look at geothermal in the scope of this research, but potentially it is something that could be looked into.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Again, thank you all. We all hope that you get very high marks for this. It was all very relevant to our community, and it is really quite unique, I think, to have such fresh ideas that are not encumbered by all kinds of barriers in thinking, and that in itself is really quite valuable, and it's the halcyon days for you people at this time because you haven't been corrupted with all kinds of other people's limitations, so good for you. It's to our benefit. Mr. Kirkopoulos will have the last word.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to thank the class. They've been great. I know a few times when I talked to them early on in this semester, they asked a lot of questions. They were interested in the project, and I think today is a great example of learning for students and for us, I think, on theoretical issues and the practical solutions. I think sometimes they go with these issues that we hear about, that we learn about. So my gratitude to them as well, and thank Council for their indulgence in terms of these presentations and the partnership with Brock University.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor?
And probably that what we can do is send the reports when they are complete.
Yes.
So that you have that as the complete note of what they have done. And as we said, certainly something that we can develop even further.
Very good. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you all. Could I ask everyone to sit down and refocus? We're going to begin again. We do have quite a bit more agenda going forward here. We have Mike and we have Amanda Fife and Mike Kirkopoulos who are going to provide an introductory presentation. And then the representatives of Watson Associates will come forward to give their report on water and wastewater study. Mike?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thanks for the opportunity. Just to provide a very quick introduction, we're going to try to go through this as quickly as possible. But staff did think it was important to give you just some opening comments in terms of where we're coming from, what's some of the work that we've done, and why some of the recommendations you're going to see from Watson are before you. So I'm going to provide some of the opening comments, and Amanda's going to take you through a few of the charts and just describe what they show. So in terms of some background information, the rate study is conducted every 5 years with a 10-year rate projection included within it. It's comprised, as you know, of water and wastewater charges. And there's two components of what we're calling your water or your utility bill, and that is the fixed and variable components. Typically, the fixed base portion ranges between 15 and 30% of the total operating expenditures. What you're going to hear from Watson is that Lincoln is at the low end of that. We're at 6% of the fixed base portion in terms of our total operating expenditures. And you're also going to hear why we're proposing increasing that fixed base rate to a target of 25% of the total operating cost over the next 10 years. There's also a variable portion, and this really is the portion that's based on consumption. So in this, I think a number of councillors who have definitely forwarded me inquiries from the community or inquiries from individuals, there are those that say we're on the higher end in terms of our variable portion, and that is true. So what we're proposing as it relates to that piece, and again, Watson will take you through this in more detail, is keeping that constant over the next 5 years. So definitely stabilizing that variable piece. And again, you'll see that in some of the charts that we're going to take you through. So over the last number of months, staff have met with Watson and Associates regarding resident concerns with the water and wastewater rates. As I said, I know I've received a lot of emails, both from residents directly and from councillors who have received inquiries through residents. And, we tried to look at some of the common complaints. Definitely wastewater charges is something that comes up and that we hear from residents, and specifically around the summer months. We've got individuals filling swimming pools, watering grass, and so you see some of these seasonal increases in water usage. As well, the lack of financial relief for unforeseen water loss. We've experienced that recently where we've got a couple of individuals who have had some unforeseen water losses, and so they looked to us and engaged us in conversations around financial relief. So some of the factors to consider during these studies, and again, Nancy's going to take you through this in a lot more detail, but they look at, and we look at, historical consumption, projected development growth, the 10-year capital plan and the needs within that 10-year capital plan. We also look beyond the 10-year capital plan. There's projections going out, as far as 75 years from now in terms of that long-term sustainability and what is the life cycle of our water and wastewater system. We also look at inventory and replacement cost for all water and wastewater infrastructure, and look at what other municipalities are doing. We look at rate comparisons, we look at how other municipalities are charging or not charging, and how their rates are determined. As well, as I said earlier, just the resident complaints and the alternatives that we're seeing and that other municipalities are doing. There are leak abatement programs that are being implemented as well in a number of municipalities. So an explanation of the charges, fairly self-explanatory, but we wanted to give council just again a little bit of background on what is the water rate, and that's really based on the amount of water one uses as measured by your water meter. And this really covers the cost of bringing water to your home, including operating and maintaining our system. The wastewater rate, and this is based on the amount of water you use, again, as measured by the water meter, and this really covers the cost to collect, transport, and treat sewage as well. The water and wastewater basic charge, this is billed on a daily rate, and this is based on meter size. It covers the cost of the water meter, customer service, and billing.
So the purpose of our rate change, to develop a sustainable model for billing to minimize town's risk for increasing operational and fixed costs for water and wastewater. There's two models or scenarios that were considered by Watson and Associates within the rate study. The staff recommendation is scenario 2, with the rationale being most municipalities aim for 15 to 30% to recover costs. The town is proposing a target of 25% over the next 10 years. Introducing the rate change at this time ensures better affordability for residents rather than a rate increase to reflect annual operating pressures. So proposed rates for 2017, again, scenario 2. Below is an average residential water bill based on an annual base charge and 175 meter cubed annual consumption variable charge. In 2016, an average homeowner would pay $877.06 a year for water and wastewater. While the base is slightly increasing over the next 5 years, you can see the variable rate has actually stabilized. In 2017, the proposal is to have two variable rates, one from September to May and the other from June to August. This helps address the complaints about higher charges in the summer months when filling pools and watering grass. The impact of these seasonal rates is actually a decrease to the 2017 variable rate. The total impact in 2017 would be an increase to the base charge of $12.49 and a decrease in variable charges of $32.83, again, based on the 175 meter cubed annual consumption. So the overall annual water bill a resident would decrease $20.34 or 2% in 2017. After 2017, the variable rate is held constant and there is a total annual increase of approximately 2%. So Lincoln currently in the 2016 structure is ranked around fifth from the bottom or 9th. In our current what we just talked about, the seasonal structure that we're proposing in scenario 2, we would actually be ranked 11th, which would be 3rd from the bottom. And then we wanted to highlight in blue the status quo, which is in the presentation from Watson, scenario 1. And that would bring us to ranking 7.
So again, just to recap, what I think you're going to hear from Watson and what this presentation shows, what's being proposed is a 2% decrease in 2017. It's definitely a shift in philosophy, and I think Nancy will speak to that philosophical way in which a lot of communities are looking at their water system, and that is really mitigating the risk from a cost recovery standpoint while also balancing affordability. It is a local and national best practice, and again, Nancy can take you through some of those details. And our hope is that following today's presentation, staff will have a report at the December 13th Committee of the Whole, as well as a presentation on our water and wastewater rates as part of the 2017 budget. So I'll turn it over to Nancy now to take you through her more in-depth presentation.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor Easton, council members, staff, and the public. My name is Nancy Neal. I have with me tonight my colleague, Byron Tan, who worked very closely with staff on putting together the rates. There's a few things we're going to go through. I'll try and take you through some legislative components of the needs and the requirements around water and wastewater and setting rates, as well as getting into the details of some of the calculations and the options for the rate structures. So the purpose of the study was to identify capital needs as well as the financing for both services for a 10-year forecast period, to identify various different cost recovery methods, and provide as well operating forecasts for the next 10 years and the rates. As Mike mentioned, there will be 2 different options for the wastewater rates. The water rates are recommended to stay at the status quo structure the way it is today, with the base charge and the one volume rate. So we'll take you through some of the legislation, like I said, and then we're going to show you the volumes and customer forecasts that we've assumed throughout the forecast, the capital life cycle costing for the longer term asset replacement of your existing system, the operating expenditures, the rates, and again, that policy matter with the rate structure. So high level, since Walker 10, new legislation has been passed. There's been quite a few different pieces of legislation passed, including the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act, Ontario Regulation 45307, which is part of the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Water Opportunities Act. There's also other requirements for infrastructure funding these days to have sustainability plans, asset management plans, et cetera, in order to continue to be allowed to actually apply for some of the funding, such as what is applied for under the Municipal Infrastructure Strategy funding. The Water Opportunities Act has a number of elements to foster the technologies, services, and practices in private and public sectors for water, wastewater, and stormwater. Prepare conservation plans and sustainability plans for all three services. It's noted that we've only looked at water and wastewater services. Stormwater services is still captured through your tax base and is not part of the study. The Water Opportunities Act is the main piece of legislation that we deal with through the rates, and to date there's only been one regulation passed under that which deals with the composition of the Water Board. So at this point, we are following what we believe may be full regulations, but there could be changes needed as those regulations are passed into the future. Part 3 of the Act actually provides the sustainability plans and more of the detailed information requiring water financial plans, which is required to receive your approval for your licensing. The rate study will provide the majority of what the municipality needs going forward to prepare that water financial plan for submission with your water license. The financial plan must include an asset management plan for the infrastructure, a conservation plan, and strategies for maintaining and improving the service, how it's dealt with for new technologies, growth, etc. I apologize for how small this is, but just to provide you with your current rate structure, as you can see, your base charge is charged on a quarterly basis, and it varies by the meter size. So the information that we provided, or that Mike provided for a average residential unit would be at that first charge of $9.15 quarterly right now. You also have some water haulers that pay a monthly base charge of $43.07. And then there is the volume rate, which is currently for water at $2.10 and for wastewater at $2.49. There are also a number of customers who have water only and no wastewater service. They are also charged a base charge. It's slightly higher than the other customers on both services, and there's additional rate structure changes anticipated that we'll be showing you for those customers as well. And you do have one customer currently that has a wastewater meter. Most customers only have the water meter, and so the wastewater bill is calculated off that water meter reading. Just a high-level profile of your customers currently. Your metered water and wastewater customers, there's almost 6,200 water customers and almost 5,600 metered wastewater customers that also have water. Again, there are some non-metered customers for various reasons that receive a flat rate. There's one for water, but there is 104 flat rate wastewater users. For the forecast in the users and volumes, we looked at your 2015 volumes for both water and wastewater customers. And then we added to that growth based on the growth forecast that's set out in the current development charge background study, and assumed the growth of those customers would be at an average volume of 175 cubic meters per year. In dealing with the capital infrastructure needs, we worked very closely with town staff to develop and look at capital works needed for the future years. We looked at what the needs were, the timing of those projects, quite often in conjunction with road reconstruction projects as well, and the costs related to them. As well, growth-related capital needs were incorporated into the forecast, and any kind of financing from development charges and or growth-related debt is dealt with. Again, I apologize for how small this is, but we have provided a list of all of the capital jobs that are provided within the 10-year forecast. They include EA studies, design and construction of the water mains, the growth-related projects, as well as some upgrade projects. So there's a number of projects that are not just pure replacement with the size of pipe that is there today, but there's upgrades happening as well to help service growth in the future. Again, same kind of project listing, although smaller in number for wastewater. Went the wrong way, sorry. For the capital financing options, there are a number of different financing options available to municipalities for water and wastewater. We have incorporated transfers from reserves, debt, although it is only growth-related debt that will be funded from development charge proceeds in the future. Actual transfers from development charge revenues collected. There's grant funding anticipated. And there are operating budget transfers, although they are first transferred from the operating budget to the reserves and reserve funds, and then from there to capital. So they're not a direct transfer from your operating budget to your capital. Another form is Municipal Act charges through Part 12, where you could charge customers that exist today something similar to what a development charge would be for new customers coming on. But currently, we are not assuming any of that in the forecast. The reserves that we look at, you have a number of reserves. Your capital actually deals with large capital items and your life cycle replacement for capital or for your infrastructure. There's a development charge reserve fund for each of the water and wastewater service. For water, there's a water meter replacement reserve, and there's rate stabilization reserves for both. So in total, at the end of 2015, the reserves and reserve funds for water were approximately $8.4 million, and for wastewater were approximately $6.4 million. The financing that we have provided for, and I want to note, if you're looking at the capital listing a few slides back, it was in uninflated dollars. We've actually taken the forecast and inflated it over the forecast period, and this is the financing that is based on that inflated capital forecast. So as you can see, we've identified some of the grant possibilities or options that that staff have indicated. There's development charges, the growth-related debentures that will be paid for from future DCs, as well as transfers from your water and wastewater capital reserves. Looking at your existing infrastructure, both your water and wastewater systems date back to the mid-60s. There is a total existing value of your water infrastructure of $41.9 million and of your wastewater system of about $38 million. This provides for a per customer average investment by the town of almost $6,800 for water and $6,700 for wastewater. This next slide provides a summary of that total replacement for water. There's facilities as well as linear infrastructure and the linear infrastructure of the sanitary sewers. There is, of the $79.7 million of infrastructure in place, about $9.2 million that is coming due and will be addressed over the 10-year forecast, which leaves a net of $70.5 million that we then look at over the longer forecast period and do a life cycle calculation for looking at what you should be investing annually to ensure that your reserves are in a position to pay for that infrastructure as it comes due into the future. For your operating budgets, we have recognized inflation at 5% for materials and utilities annually and 2% for all other operating expenditures. In addition, we have provided a transfer to a new reserve for water and 25,000, so of 25,000 both for water and wastewater, so a total of 50,000 per year from the rates going into a new reserve for leak abatement. And this, in discussion with staff, was to try and deal with some of the residential issues that you've been experiencing with breaks and leaks, and is meant to be a one-time compensation adjustment for emergency situations for residences that experience these, and will help to mitigate any additional write-offs you may have to deal with in the future. The next graph provides you with an overview of the water operating budget. It's broken into two components. The blue section is your pure day-to-day operating costs. The burgundy section is the capital related. So that includes any expenditures related to debt and transfers to reserves and reserve funds. The rate structure for water, as Mike mentioned, the base charge increases that we're looking at over the next 10 years it actually looks like a large amount when you see this at 17.5% annually. And I'm going to come back to this in a future slide to show you what that really means. But we're trying to reach more of a fixed percentage of your total operating costs that you're collecting through that base charge. So regardless of whether or not someone turns their tap on or flushes their toilet, you will be getting closer to 25% of those fixed costs that you're dealing with annually. As Mike mentioned, most municipalities are trying to increase that to upwards of 30% of their total fixed costs. And currently you're at around 7% for water. And we'd be looking to move to approximately 8% next year with that 17.5% increase to the rate. So you'd be getting approximately 1% more of your fixed costs covered through that rate. Your volume rates, we've looked at keeping them constant over the forecast period. And then for the customers that have water only, no wastewater connection at this time, we're looking at holding them constant over the next 5 years, and then starting to increase those rates to match the other base charge rates that all other customers will be paying. Your flat rate customers, we're looking at a 2% annual increase to their bill. For wastewater, again, the blue component of the graph is your day-to-day operating expenditures, and the burgundy is both transfers to reserves and any debt. For the wastewater rate structure, this is where we do have a couple of options. Your flat rate customers, again, we're looking at a 2% annual increase. For the one metered commercial wastewater customer that you have, we're looking at the base charges for them remaining constant for the next 5 years and then increasing in the second 5-year period of the forecast to match the balance of the wastewater customers and their base charges. So the base charges and volume rates that we're looking at, the first option is to continue with the current structure, where you have a base charge and then a volume charge that is the same charge regardless of the season that you're in. So you would be charged the same volumetric rate throughout the year. The second varies that constant rate. So you would have a different rate for your summer months versus the balance of the year. For both options, we're looking at base charges with increases over the forecast period, again, moving up to collecting 25% of your total operating expenditures. Currently, you're at 6% of your total expenditures, and we'd be looking at, currently you're at 6%. Under option 1, you'd be looking at moving to 7.1% collection. Under option 2, you'll actually be receiving 7.6% of your total operating expenditures in 2017. So for option 1, that base monthly charge would be increasing again at the 17.5% annually. And your volume charges would remain constant at the $2.49 per cubic meter. Option 2, the base charge increases is slightly less at 16.5% annually. And then in the high season, you'd actually be looking at a lower rate per cubic meter of $1.87 approximately. And in the that's over the summer months, and then for the balance of the year, you'd still be at that $2.49 per cubic meter. The difference in these options really, we focus the funding availability to the rate stabilization reserve, and that's where there's a bit of a difference. So over the forecast period in option 1, you would have a rate stabilization reserve balance of $8.24 million at the end of 2026. Under option 2, that would decrease to a reserve fund balance of $4.75 million in 2026. And that's something that you as the town will have to monitor over time to ensure that if you are implementing option 2, that with emergencies and different things that you need to use with changes in weather, where there may be a need to use some of the rate stabilization reserve, whether or not that is going to be sufficient over the forecast period. So based on the rate forecast, the average residential bill, as Mike mentioned, we looked at an average consumption of 175 cubic meters annually. That is increasing you from approximately, for water, a $404 bill annually up to $410 next year, and over the forecast, up to $551 annually. For wastewater, you'd be moving under option 1 from $472 annually up to $479 annually. So overall, it's less than a 2% increase between this year and next year on your total water and wastewater bill. Under option 2, slight differences, but about a 2.3% increase overall combined water and wastewater rate. To give you a comparison of where your rates are, there's the slide that Mike provided, and I do want to point out a few things on this slide. First off, all of the other municipalities listed here, these are based on their current 2016 rates. We could not find any data that anyone has passed their 2017 rates yet and made them public to be able to give you a bit of a comparison. So even with the status quo of your rate structure for wastewater, where you're falling number 7th on the line there, you're still comparing a 2017 rate for yourself to 2016 rates for all other municipalities. So you may actually be a little less at the end of the day. And obviously, your 2,000 or your seasonal structure option 2 brings you lower. I did hand out an additional slide that I apologize. After speaking with Mike today, I thought it might be important to bring forward, and it's not in the slide deck in front of you, and that's why I've handed it out. We will provide this tomorrow, and it can be loaded up on your website. But this is looking at the base charges. So when you see that 17.5% increase in your water and in your wastewater bills, it seems like a very large amount. But when you look at a comparison of what your base charges are compared to all the other municipalities in the region, you are significantly lower. And right now, again, looking at their 2016 rate, you have a total currently, if under the status quo, of $7.19 we're proposing for next year, or at the seasonal structure, $17.16. If you look at the next comparator, the lowest is St. Catharines at $19.75 per month for their fixed base charges for both water and wastewater. So what we're proposing, even with that 17.5% annual increase over the forecast, in year 2026, you would rank against everyone else's 2016 rates somewhere between 6th and 7th. So it still is not an extreme increase. And I just wanted to put that into perspective, because I know when people see 17.5%, they think that's quite a bit. So in moving forward, as part of your meeting next week, considering the capital program that has been laid out here, it is in line with the draft budget that staff has put together for the 2017 water and wastewater budget and the forecast that you'll be seeing in the weeks to come. So the operating budget, again, is based on the inflated forecast that we've provided here, and the proposed rates for both water and wastewater, and the option for the structure change in wastewater is what you'll be looking at next week for approval. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to provide you with anything.
I'll start with this. Councillor Foster.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming in and bringing this to us. And I've been through the water battles for years, along with Councillor McMillan. The very first Watson report we had was back, maybe about 2002, where we set the course for what we're doing with our water and wastewater rates where they are today. And I'm sitting here completely confused, and so and that doesn't happen very often. So, well, you could ask Councillor Thompson maybe more often than not, but it seems to me that what's being recommended is essentially a justification for taking more of the rate that's coming in and using it towards administration and overhead, rather than used for the frontline, actual work within water and sewer. So can you just quickly explain again this base versus variable that you're talking about? Because it seems to me that it's something that, in my mind, is going to be very difficult to justify, even though we're looking at all these other municipalities doing what we're doing. Lemmings all run off the edge of the cliff together too. So, maybe we need to be looking at this saying maybe we have it right. So, so can you just explain this again for us?
Yeah, in consultation with staff, we were looking at how to fund all your costs, not just your day-to-day operating costs, but the extensive capital program you have coming due, and also dealing with the life cycle costs that are needed into the future, and starting to put away money for that. And that's something that you have been doing for years and has been part of previous studies. The looking at trying to increase your fixed monthly charge is to help to try and mitigate large fluctuations that municipalities are seeing quite often because of weather conditions. In a very wet year, volumes can be very much decreased in the consumption patterns. However, most of your operating expenditures are fixed. And so to try and reduce the reliance on a rate stabilization reserve and to provide the municipality with more confidence that that's part of why we're looking at trying to increase that monthly base charge and that fixed component that you're guaranteed. There's nothing to say that if council decides that that's not the route you want to go, that you can look at increases to just the volume rate as well with inflationary impact rates. However, conservation efforts, climate changes, a lot of these different aspects are being are coming to the forefront more. Municipalities are having to deal with larger fluctuations in volumes and yet still cover off those fixed expenditures, which is the majority of your day-to-day expenditures. And so it was just something in discussions that these were the options that through consultation with staff and ourselves is what we brought forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So just, yeah, I'll look forward to what staff brings back to us based on this report. I think the justification would have been stronger had we like one thing that came as a surprise to me in looking through the numbers was how healthy the rate stabilization is within within these areas for both water and for wastewater. So had that not been like that, then I think there might be a stronger case for pushing the base fees. But so again, we're going to have to hear from staff and sort of follow up on this. As I said, I have some big question marks that are being raised from this. So thank you.
Sure. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the delegation. I have less questions. Certainly, I know that the region has always been, since the first year I've been on council, they started the conversation at one of their water open houses about how they want to get closer and closer to the 100% fixed cost and take the variable out of the equation, because I understand we've been exceptionally good at conservation to our detriment because the costs don't change no matter how much water goes through the pipe. One thing that did strike me as odd in this report from a numbers standpoint was the fact that in the capital expenditures, it's indicated in 2018 and 2019 that $450,000 each year would be spent on water meter replacement costs, yet the water meter replacement reserve fund is only at $67,500. That's a massive gap. I don't know how that's going to get filled, but maybe there's something that I'm missing.
Do you have a response for the councillor?
I don't know the specifics about about that program itself. Staff may be able to assist more in that, in providing you with an answer.
Okay.
Can you help us here, Mike?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to turn over to Dave and Angela as it, I think, relates to the water meter reserve, and then I've got a couple of comments when the councillors are finished, just in terms of what we'll be bringing back.
Mr. Graham?
Through you, Madam Chair. The town has started to put money away for the anticipation of this program. which is being phased in, I believe, starting in 2018 over a 3-year period, which we will continue to put funds in. There may be a shortfall, but because the reserve dollars are there, we will continue to fund it even though the program is being implemented, and we will replace those dollars as we build up that reserve and replace it. So it's almost borrowing within the water reserve to fund it, and then we will continue to replenish it.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor? Thank you, Angela. Any other questions? Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Your Worship. I've got a couple questions. And you know, back to the, Councillor Foster mentioned at the original study on water and wastewater rates. We had a presentation last year where finally our water system was at self-sustaining. So that's now where we see the rates actually going down for 2 years, or going down 2%, but we're at that sustainability. So now we've got to catch up on the fixed cost side. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in theory, then if we institute this, we'll get to that 17.5%. So in 2026, will then the fixed cost be self-sustainable? Or will it reach a benchmark where then the complete system will be self-funded?
By 2026, you will be recovering through the fixed charge 25% of your total operating expenditures.
Okay.
Today, you're collecting around 6 to 7%, depending on the system. So for both systems, you'll be moving to a higher percentage of the fixed, or of the total operating expenditures being recovered through that fixed cost, and only 75% versus 94% being from the variable rate.
Okay.
Throughout the forecast period, we're ensuring that you are staying fully sustainable within your rates.
Then a couple more questions. When we were at AMO this year in Windsor, there was a presentation that I attended was about running your water and wastewater system like a utility. City of Edmonton does it with their EPCOR. So you run it like a hydro utility. So it completely becomes I talk with my hands, completely becomes not part of municipality, but then again, it's taken off of, I think it's the a portion of taxes. Can you?
Okay, when it comes to the taxes, right now you are fully paying for your water and wastewater systems through your rates, so it's not on the tax base.
No, and some municipalities do that, and that's why when we talk about water and wastewater rates, we know some of them artificially lower them because they do have them on the tax rate. So.
Partly, and if you look at the comparison of the municipalities, there is one municipality within the region that is still funding their wastewater rates through the property tax. Okay, and what we've done for them to try and still give a proper comparison is we've looked at their tax levy rate and provided it based on an average residential assessment value, so that we still have that comparison, and that note is on there. When it comes to providing a separate utility, with the legislation currently in Ontario, you don't totally separate yourselves. The council is still you still have ownership and responsibility of the system. There are a number of water boards throughout the province of Ontario that work for a number of municipalities, and both having a utility system and a municipal run system has its pros and cons. It's not something that will fully and totally separate itself, though, from your responsibility, and especially under the new legislation for water.
And just one more and a follow-up, because it's our responsibility maintaining the water system, and we're all held personally liable for this.
Yes, you are.
And so a question when we're looking at rates, we're trying to practice our due diligence with our backflow prevention system. Talking to Mr. Graham today, we're up about 82%. Not 100%, but 82%. What's your thoughts on the 18% of the people that don't have the prevention system in place that can, in fact, jeopardize the entire system, their rate being doubled until they come into compliance?
Well, Councillor Pachariba, that's a great question, but it really isn't part of the report. And we can't expect Nancy to speculate on that, but it's a very interesting thought.
Well, when they broke down, your users and your different names, and I mean, it's easily identifiable. But I don't mean to put you on the spot, Nancy, but
Thank you very much, Nancy. Councillor Njima, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. On page 15, the proposed capital financing programs from 2016 to 2026. The reserve amounts in there, does that assume scenario number 1, or does that assume scenario number 2?
Both.
Okay.
The capital program that is laid out does not vary between the two options for the wastewater rate structure. What's varying is how much we're going to collect over the summer months versus the balance of the year. All your capital and operating expenditures are still the same under both scenarios. Okay? The one change is the transfer to that rate stabilization reserve.
Reserves.
That's the only change. There's no change to capital. The only change to operating is that transfer to the rate stabilization reserve.
And that's quite a significant amount after 10 years.
After 10 years. And that, keep in mind, is also a reserve fund, I believe. Yes, it's a reserve fund. So it does earn interest as well over the forecast period as you put money in it if it's not used.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. What do you mean when you say the age of the water system and the wastewater system date back to the 60s? Is that, I assume that's not that our pipes are 60 years old or?
Some are. Yeah, there are water mains and sanitary sewers that are still in place today that date back to the 60s.
But
yeah, and that's why I say your system is as old as the 60s.
The oldest part of it is
the oldest part of it is the 60s. There is continuous replacement of the system as it's needed, based on various things. Staff look at breaks. They look at the age of the system. They quite often look at the material as well that the pipes are. Currently, we have PVC. In past years, there was other types of materials used that don't necessarily or didn't necessarily have the same lifespan. So the system is constantly being monitored and replaced as needed.
Councillor McPherson, I believe that Mr. Koukopoulos has something to add on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just quickly on that, and I think Nancy touched on that as she spoke to it at the end. I mean, Council has done a good job investing in the water system. I do want to be very clear with that. When I look at the investments that have been made over the last decade and even longer, Council's made that necessary investment. So I want that to be clear. When you look at PVC and you look at some of the new materials, it does have a longer shelf life. It does have a longer ability to stay in the ground. You're looking at 75 years versus other sorts of materials that historically, in the past, when you look at the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even beyond, had a shorter life cycle. So I just want that to be clear. I think the other comment that I would make is that staff will be bringing forward some clarification. I know this is a lot of information regarding the rate budget and based on study impacts for consideration, so Council can have that on the 13th. I'll also suggest, and I think, as Nancy said, there's two options. There is the status quo option, and there's the other proposal that I think, we've done some work on for Council. Either way, staff will be ready to answer any questions on either of those proposals, based on, I think, the conversations that that our finance staff have had with Watson. There's probably some benefit into moving into this direction, but there's also, some pros to staying in the current format and remaining status quo. So that said, staff will be bringing back a fulsome explanation of that and give you some more clarification. This is a lot of information to consume. I know for myself, just reading the reports over the weekend, as I received the final report and staff did, bringing ourselves up to speed, and I think presenting this amount of information is often, a challenge. And so we'll make sure we've got some more information for council.
Thank you very much. Councillor, satisfactory? Anyone else? Questions? Thank you very much, Nancy. Very, a lot of detail. If I hadn't been sitting at the regional council for the last 2 years and hearing how much pressure there is for the local area municipalities to take all of the risk in terms of the fixed costs, I think I might have a little bit different view. But certainly we need some more information on the risks and benefits of these two options. No question about it. But I don't think we could say that you didn't provide us with all the information, because it all seems to be there. All right, so thank you very much for that, and we'll look forward to further discussion on the 13th. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have any motion at all in terms of receiving the report? Nothing? All right, thank you. That concludes the delegations, councillors. We have no correspondence, and we'll move into reports. I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Thompson that the minutes of the Council Business Planning Committee of the whole meeting of November 23rd, 2016 be adopted, and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon. Councillor Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Easton. So this was the discussion on our first major discussion on the operational budget. Within that particular meeting, Mr. Kirkopoulos was able to give us an overview of the town's operations. We had a good overview once again of the guiding principles that we follow within our budget processes. Took a look at meeting some of the regulatory and legislative requirements as well. A good solid overview, and all of this, by the way, is online on our budget page. In fact, all of our budget items are there. So we took a look at the components of the operating budget and impacts on the assessment growth. Mr. Kirkopoulos was able to show us what was happening with these differing pieces of the puzzle, and he took us through a summary of the budget focus. So I guess the long and the short of it was that was a good first evening to go through and see what was coming at us. We had a presentation from the Lincoln Public Library on their budget to discuss what was happening there. We also had Mr. Kirkopoulos take us through the overview of each of the departments to give us an idea of what was happening within that. So from that, there was some direction given, and some items came back to our following meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, thank you very much. Any questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Councillor Foster, could I ask you to do report C and D at the same time as you're moving along, just for continuity?
Sure can. Let's down here.
Sorry. Mr. Kirkopoulos is doing C.
Yeah. Yeah, so, okay. He can do
Or
C.
D. He's doing D? Yes, it's
Okay, then
D.
I'll do C.
And you'll do C. Thank you.
Okay, so I can do C. So this was the second one of our meetings on the budget. The discussion that was going on here, just let me get down to it here for a second. So, The items that we had asked Mr. Kirkopoulos to take away included some items around the library IT funding. Council is very much interested in seeing the library and the town work together when it comes to IT issues. The road program reserve trending. We were looking at a special capital levy consideration within this. The tax rate affordability was a key issue that was being discussed. The operating budget background information was presented to us. Human resources metrics. So again, Mr. Kirkopoulos was able to give us a good idea of where resources are going to go and what was to be attempted. And a couple of the trust funds as well. We understood a little bit better, particularly around cemeteries, some of the monies that are available within that. Rate stabilization, we did get a report on that, and rate stabilization is very healthy within the municipality. So that was a very positive discussion. So from that, there was a series of discussions on various items within it. And once again, there was consideration given to staff to go away and take another look at a variety of things and to come back with some final reports on this. I think generally speaking, as chair, it was agreed that there was certain scenarios that made a lot of sense for us to be considering. And in fact, Mr. Kirkopoulos will be coming back with more information on that. Just as a general comment, and I made this at the meeting as well, there was, it's pretty aggressive on the human resources end of things with what it is that we have done with this particular budget. And I made some comments at the meeting as well. I was concerned about the position of Economic Development Officer, and talking to other members of council since then. I mean, I've come to understand that, you know, this is an important area for us to be looking at and continuing into the future. But I also had a discussion with Mr. Kirkopoulos about the legislative position that was being considered. And was truly wondering, because there has really been no major review done of the clerk's department and where we're going with resources, if perhaps maybe that wasn't somewhat premature for that particular position. So anyway, I'd thrown that out to Mike, and I know he's going to be having a discussion on this as well. But I think the other thing that we have to be mindful of was what Mayor Easton presented to us earlier this evening, and that is the region's now coming in at 2%. Now, I think all of us are going to applaud the fact that they're looking at doing 1% for capital infrastructure. Very good, and in fact, it's nice to see them following, once again, the lead of the town of Lincoln when it comes to looking at these types of things. But it does kind of blow our blended rate theory somewhat as we're looking at it. So anyway, I'm just a question through to the CAO then. From a positions point of view, is there any trimming or is there any considerations that you may still have within that? Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Kirkopoulos, does your report under item D cover that question?
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I suggest I go through the report in item D and then can speak to each of the FTEs that I think were presented, okay, the rationale for each of those. And similarly, you know, we have taken into account, having read the media and the information coming from the region, what a potential 2% increase at the region does in terms of that blended rate. So I've got that scenario in front of me as well, and I can speak to that following Councillor Foster's review of those particular minutes.
All right, then, councillors, what I'll read the motion, and we'll vote on this, and then I'll have Mr. Kirkopoulos give his report. Then, for the public who are viewing, there will be better continuity, and then Councillor Njima will be happy to accept your report. I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Thompson that the minutes of the Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole meeting of November the 30th, 2016 be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon. Are there any further questions? Your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Mr. Clerk, could I see the next motion, please? Councillor Pachariva?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a correction with respect to the meeting on November 23rd. It's got me showing as being absent. I left at 9:30. I missed the last 20 minutes to go grab my son. So, yeah, I was here for that.
He'll correct that. I certainly do remember you participating, no question about it. All right, councillors, let's move on to item D, report number AD 16-17. I'll read the motion. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that report number AD 16-17 regarding the 2017 budget be received, and that council approve in principle the information contained within and referenced by this report and the operating and capital levy budget, subject to any changes made on December the 5th, 2016, to the Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole budget meeting on December 13 for final approval. And that the final operating and capital budgets then be considered together with the water wastewater rate budget for final council ratification on December 19, 2016. All right, we'll have Mr. Kirkopoulos' report, and we'll move forward. Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in terms of the recommendations in front of you, I think they're worded in such a way to accommodate any changes council directs and desires to see in this budget this evening. A final conversation and approval on the 13th at Committee of the Whole. And then I think, as it suggests here, final budget approval on December 19th. Just to give council a brief overview, and I won't go through all the guiding principles and the things that Chair Foster took us through. But the report you have in front of you is really meant to give you an overview of where we're at and how we got to where we are. And I'll probably take you to the bottom of the page, which really talks about where we started. We started at approximately 9% for the town's portion and an anticipated blended rate using the 1% ratio of 3.29. Since then, we've come back to council. We've provided you information. We've given you information as it relates to needs. We've, I think, sharpened our pencils, and every time council sent us back to the table. Since then, that rate has come down to 7.64, with a blended rate slightly under 3. Part of that was done, I think, looking at what were some of the needs and wants, what could be deferred from this budget, what would be some of the things we would look to phase in this particular budget, and again, taking some direction from council as it related to what they wanted to see in this budget. We did have some conversations, as Chair Foster highlighted, as it related to the library, and we adjusted the library board capital to reflect some of those items. We also had the application of development charges that were used to, I think, offset some of the items. They initially hadn't come forward when we were talking about the library. I think as Chair Foster highlighted, those aren't library DC reserves, those are actually town DC reserves, so something that we tried to incorporate. During that presentation on the 30th, we did provide a number of scenarios. In each of those scenarios, slightly got lower, where we ended up with the staff recommended scenario of 7.64. I'll kind of fast forward you to page 3 of the summary that you have before you, which really highlights some of the controllable and uncontrollable elements of the budget, and what I'm calling that base budget, not the FTEs, not the increases in funding for relevant agencies, but some of those collective agreement adjustments that were negotiated, some of the inflationary increases we're seeing, the construction costs that are coming in, utility increases that I think we're seeing around hydro and other sorts of things, across not only this region, but I would say across the province, as well as then some of the controllable items, whether that be just, increasing materials for parks, cemeteries, beautification, other sorts of things that we've tried to put in around master plans and wayfinding signage and the transit pilot that I think a number of councillors spoke to earlier. We've also incorporated, as is clear, a special infrastructure levy of 1% in order to, I think, catch up from an infrastructure standpoint. Again, I think council's made great investments in infrastructure, but a lot of municipalities, as they look at their infrastructure needs, as they look at the infrastructure stimulus programs coming, are similarly looking at these sorts of long-term sustainable investment. Taking you to the FTE conversation, to the human resource conversation, there were 4 that were presented for council consideration, and I'm going to highlight that SMT went through a very exhaustive process on these 4. We did look at the core functions that were required, how they supported council, how they supported the outcomes that council wanted to see, what they meant from a service delivery standpoint, and that is both regulatory and legislative, and the role in revenue generation, and were there other ways we could do it. I think there's some cases where some of the FTE looks that we had were things that were, no levy impact. We looked at internally, could we fund some items, but the 4 that had a levy impact that we've brought before you and that you've heard us speak to on a number of occasions are highlighted. And they start with a resource for our Sport, Recreation, and Culture Department at the senior management level, an economic development officer, a legislative coordinator, and an emergency management and regulatory coordinator. As I said, we've gone through all of these, and I think they're necessary. We wouldn't have brought them forward if we didn't think they're important. I think to specifically answer Councillor Foster's question around the legislative coordinator, and I think this is the case for a number of these. I know we've been talking about economic development officers for, the better part of, I think I've read articles from 2012 where we've been talking about this. I understand council's desire to want to explore these and to make sure we've got strong business cases and that we've done our reviews. Councillor Foster did highlight and ask me the question around the legislative coordinator, and would I be okay with a deferral of sorts on this one until we can do a review and then come back to council in the new year, going through a new model in terms of what our system looks like with chairs and vice chairs. We've got a number of new committees that are starting. I suggested that I would be okay with that. I don't want that to be taken as I don't think the position's necessary. I think it's an important position. As I do all positions, I wouldn't have brought them to you, but I did suggest that, if we want to come back at the end of the first quarter, come back before mid-year and share with you, I think, some details on how things are working, how things are looking from the perspective of support that we're providing you at committee, how you're finding the committee structure to work, how you're finding the support you're receiving at committee. I can tell you, looking at the amount of work our clerk and deputy clerk do, and the very aggressive agenda we're going to have in the new year, both from a work perspective, but just from a committee perspective and a council perspective, it's going to be challenging. But I completely understand, council's desire and council's will to want to look at, how it's going, what the data is showing, how meetings are going, and then make that decision, from the perspective of eyes wide open. That's my summary. If we're directed to make some additional tweaks and additional cuts, we can do that. I can tell you, looking at where we currently stand and incorporating a 2% from the region, our blended rate falls in the mid-3s. So we'd be at 3.63. Looking at the way the budget currently stands now with 7.64. And the 2% from the region in terms of that blended rate. Again, should council direct us to look at deferral of some items, we'd probably be looking at a number in the high sixes from the perspective of the town's portion, and a blended rate in the low 3s in terms of where we would stand. So Notwithstanding all that, we are at council's discretion. We can look at all of the FDs. We can share more information should council want it between now and the 13th. And I can answer any further questions that council may have.
Councillors, let's deal with each one. Do you have any questions, Councillor Foster, as a continuation of your report?
No, actually, I think it would be appropriate for the CAO to come back and just revamp with us just slightly what it would look like, what's going on within those particular areas. And I am, you know, every once in a while you sort of get politically the tingling going on when you're looking at things, and you know this is a very aggressive budget. I think this is probably the most aggressive budget that I have seen since I've got onto town council, and I'm also a little bit concerned that it might be too aggressive. So you know, I think we have to do our due diligence, particularly around the legislative position. I'm not going to argue too much on some of the other ones. I have some concerns about them as well, but particularly I hate to say it, what Councillor Regima said the other night, that one for the fire department is not an administrative position, not in any way, shape, or form. And if it ever turns out to be that, there's going to be certainly a lot of questions being raised within council, if not with the CAO and with the fire chief. But that's not what that position was in any way, shape, or form. My understanding was being thought through. So anyway, I'll be more than happy if the CAO brings back and we can discuss this more fully at the next meeting. So thank you.
Very good. Does anybody else have any comments or questions about this position? Councillor McPherson?
Just a quick comment, Madam Mayor, and it's with around the discussion that we had the other night on metrics, and that these positions were all going to be held accountable as far as measurable metrics. And, you know, to just back off on some of these positions right now may not be the right thing to do if we've got a clear definition of what these roles are and we've got clear metrics that will measure what these people will do in these roles. I think we've got to give the CAO the opportunity to present that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, I kind of go along the same lines as Councillor McPherson. You know, we've entrusted the CAO to run the organization in a business-like fashion. So he's identified these as integral to us going forward. You know, we look at the special 1% infrastructure levy. We kicked that around the block last year. We would have been farther ahead, and we backtracked on it. So like Councillor McPherson says, you know, at some times you need to make the hard decisions. You need to make course corrections, and you know, let's hear the metrics that go along with these, and then we can make the decision. But we're not going to get any further ahead, you know, taking one step forward and two steps back.
Okay, I think Mr. Kirkopoulos has some comments.
Through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. Just to pick up on some of the comments I've heard, historically, and I presented this at the last meeting, over the last 12 years, we looked at the average tax increase here in the town of Lincoln. It's averaged 4%. I think, as I said at that meeting, this council has made I think a focus on wanting to achieve more and setting a very aggressive work plan and an aggressive agenda, and has increased you know, above that 4% last year at 5.3. Notwithstanding, I think, some of the tweaks we're making, yes, we're proposing something that is slightly higher. Part of that does incorporate, I think, some things that we haven't done in the past. That is a special infrastructure levy, as well as supporting some of the, albeit less than 1%, but supporting some of the agencies and other things that we often look to do and rely on to do a lot of the work and supplement a lot of the work that we do. On top of that, we are investing, and I do want to emphasize, we are investing in a lot of the basics. We are looking at putting together trail master plans and park master plans and doing park redevelopments. I agree with Chair Foster's comment that it's an aggressive budget, but it's a budget that I'm going to suggest is one that is back to the basics. I will definitely bring to council, I think, a number of scenarios based on what we've discussed today that look at deferring items potentially, as well as further job descriptions that we can put together between now and the 13th, should council want to review those in greater depth to understand, again, more fully than the business cases you've already been provided, what we see those roles potentially doing. So we'll be ready for the 13th to provide council that information.
Thank you very much. Councillor McMillan? Oh, I'm sorry. I've just erred here. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I'm going to echo along with Councillor Patrieva and Councillor McPherson. I believe we've set a course for moving forward and giving the CAO the tools to do so, as long as there's measurables that we can hold them to account with. I'm completely comfortable moving forward with the requests that the CAO has. So.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The term aggressive has been bandied about a little bit, and I think it's appropriate. It is a very aggressive budget, but it is also a very aggressive agenda that we have as well. And one leads to the other directly. So I'm looking forward to a more fulsome discussion when we meet on the 13th and get it resolved. But I think both are very aggressive, and the aggressive agenda, that's our fault. And that's what we want to do. So we're going to have to look at this very, very carefully to see how that can be achieved.
Very good. And Mike, you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on that aggressive comment, and I appreciate Councillor McMillan's comments. I'm going to suggest, while it may be aggressive, we need to keep up with growth in the community. It needs to keep up with the pace of what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to look down the road and it's going to be too late to be playing catch up. And so I completely understand that there's an aggressive nature to what we're proposing. It is an aggressive work plan. I think it's achievable. But I'm incredibly cognizant of taxpayer affordability. I can tell you there's been a number of individuals that have reached out either through council or to me directly to ask me specific questions about this particular budget. And I think there have all been good questions. I've tried to engage them in conversations, very fulsome conversations in terms of why we're making investments, where we're making investments, what is the health of the community, and by health I mean what is the health of the organization, whether that be our reserves, and they are in good condition, whether that be what we're projecting from a debt standpoint and what that chart looks like in terms of debt petering off as we go to the tail end of our 10-year capital plan. I think, again, all good questions and all good levels of engagement that we're having on this particular budget. And so we'll be back to you on the 13th, I think, incorporating some of these scenarios, and probably have a better idea after a vote at the region as it relates to the infrastructure and the 1% that they're looking at from a special levy consideration. I think they're voting on December the 8th on that particular item. So we'll be able to summarize all that for council and, again, hopefully move to final approval on the 13th and subsequent ratification on the 19th.
Thank you very much. My own comments would, in regard to the SRC senior management level role, I understand the need for this. Absolutely, we're not going to avoid it. We have too much history there. The job is too big as it is, and we certainly should not be denying that position. The Economic Development Officer, just in the latter part of last week and more reading that I did on the weekend, I think we would be completely taking a major step backwards if we didn't put this position in place. We have a major issue around how data is used. We have a major issue around achieving data and comparing data. We'll get data in a linear fashion. We have no mechanism for comparing that laterally to determine whether or not there's good validation. There are so many assets that we have in this community, and we need to be able to achieve in every way that we can economic development opportunities, and that includes both culture and heritage. The legislative coordinator I want to speak to you about briefly. The importance of the legislative process and the expert advice and guidance that we get from Mr. Colossa, we are accustomed to that. That's our standard. And in my opinion, that support should be available to all the committee chairs. We shouldn't have to worry whether or not a councillor who's been elected by the people has lengthy experience as a chair in order to be in that position. And to have legislative support in the form of a legislative coordinator when the clerk can't be there is the most logical manner to do that. And I don't have any difficulty with this position. There should be an expectation that the mayor and committee chairs have access to agendas and a review of any reports and the extent that's to the extent that's needed by the chair. We can't do this now. I can't do it, so when that agenda comes out late on Friday, I'm getting it when you're getting it. If there's a complex report that needs to be reviewed, I have no knowledge of that, and the same goes for you. It's impossible to keep ahead. So I believe this is an extremely important position because when Friday comes, you've only got the weekend to do any kind of extensive follow-up, and that's pretty impossible, and particularly for people who work full-time. If I had to give a concession, it would be for part of the year, while Mr. Kirkopoulos has a time to do the review, to find out where there may be some gaps in efficiency and effectiveness, to give Ms. Fife the same opportunity, and to come back to us with a more fulsome report so that we can discuss that further. The Emergency Management and Regulatory Coordinator, I need more information about this from the perspective that on Friday, the CAOs and mayors had quite an extensive discussion about shared services. And I don't know whether this is the kind of a position that can be shared. It certainly isn't the position that I would like to see the fire chief take on in the midst of a community emergency, because it's just not possible for one person to do that. So I don't know whether this position needs to be part of fire service or whether it is an emergency preparedness knowledge exclusively that could sit in another department. So I would ask Mr. Kirkopoulos to again provide us with more information, including shared services, in order to get a better handle on how this could be introduced into our community. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Kirkopoulos, do you have anything further that you would like to add?
Through you, Madam Mayor, not at this point. I think I've heard council's comments and suggestions. We'll be coming back to you on the 13th with some more information, more fulsome job descriptions as it relates to those 4 particular positions, and I think some of the scenarios that were highlighted for council consideration.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I've read the motion, and there's nothing that has changed at all in terms of the content. So I would ask your pleasure on the motion. And the motion is carried. We move on now to planning. Finance. I have a motion moved by Councillor Njima and seconded by Councillor McPherson that the minutes of the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of November 28, 2016 be adopted and the recommendations contained therein be approved and acted upon. Councillor Njima?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. To start the evening, we had a delegation from the Joint Accessibility and Advisory Committee. They're giving us an update on some of the things that they're undertaking. They're active on social media now. You can go online, you can go onto Facebook and find the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee page and follow what they're doing. They are compiling a checklist for reviewing site plans. They're a very active group. They're always engaging us in the community to raise awareness, and we're very happy to see them here the other day. And under summary of correspondence, committee asked for some further information on a piece of correspondence regarding the kind of service, the kind of care that stroke recovery patients get. There's an age, according to this correspondence, there's an age above and below which you are not entitled to treatment, or your treatment is very limited. I think it's something under 25 or over 65. So we wanted some more information on that because that seemed quite surprising. And we had another piece of correspondence regarding tax implications for transferring of small business, family, farm, or fishing operations, whether it's treated as a capital gain or a dividend. And again, there were some questions raised about that, and we asked for some more information on that. So that'll be coming back to committee, I guess, in January, possibly. We had 2 requests for relief from Committee of Adjustment application fees. Both of the requests were turned down for good reason. These timelines and the fees that are in place are for good reason, and they have strict provincial legislation behind them. We turned them both down. However, the one we are going to consider whether, if there's money at the end of the year, money left in our discretionary fund, that we'll consider possibly doing a grant because it's a nonprofit organization, and that's St. Helens Church. We then had 2 road allowance closing and sale applications come forward, and both of them we referred to. We are going to have them continue on. They're going to go to legal and be circulated to external agencies, and they'll come back again sometime in the future finance and admin meeting. And then we had a report from the fire department regarding Fire Marquee Inc., and that's a company that will go and recover peril costs that are already covered in home insurance plans. The coverage is already paid for, and what Marquee does is go to the insurance company after there's a fire and recover some of these costs. There's no dealings with the homeowner. There's no deductible involved. And if the homeowner has no insurance plan, there is no process. And this is something that we decided to go ahead with. The company handles it on our behalf. There's no other cost, I don't believe, than that. And it was estimated to be about $33,000 in revenue for the municipality. Then we had a report, FD 1620, we decided to delegate some of the minor administrative powers to the fire chief, streamline things a little. And then we had the report regarding the multi-year accessibility plan, and as always, we're on course with that, and we're doing everything that we need to be doing. And we're going to continue with the annual cost of $10,000 for the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, which we participate in with Grimsby, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Pelham, Thorold, and West Lincoln. And that was our meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. Any questions from committee? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. We have no confirmation of compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. We'll move on to bylaw. Oh, I'm sorry. We have item E, the 2017 standing committees. I have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Councillor Pachariba. that council hereby establishes the following standing committees to carry out the functions of the municipality effective January the 1st, 2017, and that each committee should be composed of those members of council so indicated and shall meet in accordance of the regular schedule so designated, and that the chair and vice chair of each standing committee shall be as so indicated. Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole will meet on the third Tuesday of each month and alternate with Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole Economic Development, and it will be comprised of all members of council. It will be chaired by Councillor Foster, and the chair will be the rotating deputy mayor. The vice chair will be the rotating deputy mayor. Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole Economic Development is a new committee representative of our initiative to give economic development a much higher profile. It will meet on the third Tuesday of each month and alternate with Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole. And it will be comprised of all members of council. It will be chaired by Councillor McPherson, and the vice chair will be Councillor Pachariba. Sport, Recreation, and Culture Committee meets the first Wednesday of each month. Councillor McMillan, Councillor Pachariba, Councillor Rinchima, Councillor Timmers, and myself, with Councillor Rinchima as the chair and vice chair as Councillor McMillan, who will also continue on with his heritage portfolio. The Planning Committee meets the second Monday of each month. The committee will be made up of Councillor Foster, Councillor McPherson, Councillor Thompson, and Councillor Timmers, and myself. And the chair will be Councillor Thompson, and the vice chair will be Councillor McPherson. Finance and Administration Committee meets the fourth Monday of each month, and the committee will be made up of Councillor Brunet, Councillor Foster, Councillor Pachariba, Councillor Rinchima, and Councillor Thompson, and myself. And the chair will be Councillor Pachariba, and the vice chair will be Councillor Rinchima. Now, historically, the Finance and Administration Committee has been made up of all of the chairs of the standing committees, and in this case, with the additional committee, there's now 5 members on this committee. The Infrastructure Committee meets the second Wednesday of each month and is made up of Councillor Brunet, Councillor McMillan, Councillor McPherson, Councillor Pachariba, and myself. It will be chaired by Councillor Brunet, and the vice chair will be Councillor McMillan. The Committee of Adjustment meets the fourth Tuesday of each month. The committee will be made up of Councillor Brunet. I have had a request from Councillor Foster and Councillor McPherson that they not sit on the committee, but Councillor Thompson wishes to sit on the committee. So the committee will be made up of Councillor Brunet, Councillor Rinchima, and Councillor Timmers. And the chair will be Councillor Timmers, and the vice chair will be Councillor Thompson. In addition, there are community members that sit on this committee. Now, at this point, does anyone have any further amendments that they would like to be considered? Councillor Rinchima.
No amendment. I'm just, could we, has there been change to the, could you repeat when each committee meets? I think there was I wasn't sure about the first and second one. I wasn't sure about the dates.
Yes. Well, Councillor Rinchima, we will send it out.
Okay.
But the first 2 committees, Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole will be the third Tuesday of each month. Oh. And Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole Economic Development will be on the third Tuesday of each month, but they'll alternate. Okay? So if there's a clearer way to say that when we send out the notice, we can do that.
That's clear. Thank you.
Okay. But it's the same week. It just alternates.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So everyone is Satisfied? I must say, I'm very satisfied that you have all agreed. I told you this before. I think this is going to be very good for us as a council, and I look forward to all the effort and energy that I know you're going to be putting into your new roles. And the rest of the motion states, and that council hereby establishes that the deputy mayor of the council of the town of Lincoln shall be rotated on a 4-month basis amongst members of council as follows. January, February, March, and April of 2017 will be Councillor Brunet. May, June, July, and August 2017 will be Councillor McPherson. September, October, November, December 2017 will be Councillor Pachariva. January, February, March, April 2018 will be Councillor Rinjima. May, June, July, and August of 2018 will be Councillor Thompson. And September, October, November of 2018 will be Councillor Thompson, or Timmers, Councillor Timmers. So if anyone finds that they can't do a month, turn to Councillor Timmers first. And that the clerk be and is hereby directed to prepare any necessary bylaws to give effect to this direction and return same to the next available meeting of council for ratification. So, on the matter of the deputy mayor, if you have any problem at all with the schedule, please speak to the clerk. If you're unable because you're going on a cruise, again, see the clerk and adjustments will be made. This part will be a guideline. The most important element is that it will be rotated. I think that everyone's been doing a great job of representing the town in all the matters that you've been asked to do so, and I'd like to see this committee, or to see this continue and see what you think about it at the end. Now, any questions to the motion? Any other comments? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. And Councillor Foster, I think you've probably been the deputy mayor more frequently than anyone. Is that true?
I think if I remember correctly, it's been about 6.5 years approximately. I've been deputy mayor at differing points. So.
Well, you've certainly done it with great support, and I can only speak to my term as the mayor, but you've been a very, very excellent support to me as I came in as a new mayor, and you took the role very seriously. You've always given good advice, and you're always looking at things with the sober second thought. So on behalf of council, I want to thank you very much because you've done us a great service. Thank you. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Brunet, who's changed his signature again. That leave be given to introduce the following bylaw. Number 2016-78, to authorize an agreement with Fire Marquee, Inc. for fire department costs and recovery services. And B, number 2016-79, a bylaw to delegate certain administrative powers to the fire chief in respect to the operation of the fire department. Any questions to the motion? A pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Foster that bylaw number 2016-78 and number 2016-79 read a first time be now read a second and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Are there any councillor inquiries? Is there any notice of motion? Are there any announcements? Mr. Clerk, do you have any announcements?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a fire open house scheduled for December 15th, dealing with a proposed, regarding the, its review of the open air burning bylaw.
Yes, very good. People are very interested in that for sure. All right, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Brunei.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate the Miracle on King Street that's going to be happening on the 17th of December. There'll be all sorts of fun and excitement with the food trucks and that sort of stuff from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on King Street between Mountain and Ontario. So
Very good.
hopefully everybody can bring your families out. And it was great to see so many young kids and young families out last year. So I look forward to an even bigger and better one this year.
Great, and I think we had that miracle happen last Friday when all of those wonderful decorations went up. So.
Absolutely, and the downtown core is looking
it's a great
fantastic for
job.
it, so thank you.
Councillor Brunei?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Just a quick comment that it looks like we have a date set for our inaugural meeting of our Active Transportation Committee. I look to the CAO or the clerk to make any additional comments, but I believe it's set for next Thursday, December the 15th. I believe the time has been moved from 6 to 7 p.m. I believe all committee members will be getting some clarification, some email on that, and I believe the meeting will be taking place in the Beamsville room. So I look to the CEO or to the clerk to make any additional comments with regards to that inaugural meeting.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that is correct, Councillor. Our first meeting will take place on Thursday, December the 15th at 7 p.m. in the Beamsville room.
Okay, very good. And Councillor Timmers? I know what Councillor Timmers is going to say.
You do? Are you sure?
I think so.
Forgive me, I don't have all the information, but I do know that the Jordan Lions is going to be visiting Camden this Saturday with Santa at 2:15 at the general store. And I'm really sorry, I don't know the rest of the schedule. I don't know if someone around the table could help me with more detail of where Santa will be in Vineland. And does anyone else have details? I just know Camden, so. So once again, it's Saturday at 2:15.
He generally visits Mike's Esso in Jordan, somewhere along that timeline.
All right, we will, thank
goes
you very much
into-
for bringing that up, and actually, I was wrong. Mr. Kirkopoulos, could the staff find out, this is a very, very unique trip that Santa makes around Lincoln, and it's a custom that we don't ever want to lose. And so I think a little more information so that we can have the children come out and be encouraged by his presence on the back of that flatbed truck in a sleigh would be great.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will definitely find out, and I'd be remiss if I didn't make a Santa joke and say that Santa knows if council's been good or bad this year.
Yes, well, that's certainly something to consider, isn't it? All right. Anyone else? Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, the BIA is hosting hopefully the final strategy session tomorrow night at the Fleming Center, 6:30. I believe it's room A, but all notifications gone out to all of the BIA members for that.
Very good. Excellent. All right, we have no closed session this evening. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Renchima that leave be given to introduce the following bylaw, number 2016-80, to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by council resolution. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pacharivas, seconded by Councillor McMillan, that bylaw number 2016-80 read a first time be now read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for tuning in, and for those who stayed with us for the duration of the meeting. The business of this regular meeting of the Town of Lincoln Council, having been completed as circulated and published, is adjourned.